Hello everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Thursday, November 17th, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world, so stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with our Techstrong News recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then we go to KubeCon Cloud Native Con North America, where Alan spoke with Uptal Bhatt, CMO of Tigera, and Fahad Rizki, Vice President of Sales at Tigera, to discuss Project Calico, a solution for open source networking and cloud native security. We will then go to Alan, where he sits down with Hemant Manda, Head of Strategic Partnership of Data and AI at IBM, to talk about how IBM released 3 AI libraries for developers to incorporate into their apps. We will then be airing another episode of Techstrong Women. In this episode, our hosts Jody Ashley and Tracy Reagan are joined by Elena Percival, a technology powerhouse who pivoted her young career by teaching herself to code shortly after she moved to Silicon Valley. Then Mike Rothman sits down with Frank Kim, CISO in residence at YL Ventures, to discuss how smaller companies should build a security program and hire dedicated security people. We're then joined by our very own Cody J. Brown, who will hop on and tell us more about some of our upcoming webinars. We will then be airing an episode of Techstrong Research Review. In this episode, Mitch Ashley and Mike Rothman do a quick show giving thanks for what they've seen in 2022 and set the stage for what's to come in 2023. Next up, we're airing episode 2 of our series, Engineering the Change. This series will follow the 3 winners of the Engineering the Change Scholarship Program as they tackle a 10-week intensive coding bootcamp and prepare themselves for careers in software engineering. Then, Mike Rothman talks to Dan Lorman, Field CISO for Presidio, as they talk about his correctly predicted view of increasing regulation for incident reporting, as well as talk about other markets where we can expect tighter regulation and what organizations should do to prepare. We will then wrap up this broadcast with 2 episodes of View with Vizard. In the first episode, Mike interviews Ming Gong, newly appointed Vice President of Product Management for Blameless, as Ming dives into how the role of the SRE is evolving as IT organizations seek to bridge the divide between DevOps and IT service management. Then, Mike interviews Jeffrey Martin, Vice President of Product for Mend, as Jeffrey explains why much more code should be automatically patched to remediate vulnerabilities. And that's what we have coming up for you on this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for November 17th. First up, in light of the FTX trading's implosion last week, the cryptocurrency exchange Binance is proposing a fund to save cryptocurrency exchanges from failure. The Binance founder and CEO, Changpeng Zhao, said the company would help create a recovery fund to help exchanges that are strong but are dealing with liquidity issues. This being said, he did not say anything about the size or scope of the proposed fund. The fund could act almost as a deposit insurance or central bank in a way, since cryptocurrencies have no government backing whatsoever. Zooming out, FTX's implosion has sent the price of several major cryptocurrencies down, and it caused many other exchanges to face withdrawal requests, prompting this recovery fund. Next, after multiple months of delays and technical issues, the Artemis 1 mission took flight yesterday morning. At 1:47 a.m., the Space Launch System, or SLS, lifted off from the launch pad in Florida, with the Orion spacecraft attached on top of it. The mission is expected to log approximately 1.3 million miles and will take a path farther than any spacecraft has gone before splashing down in the Pacific Ocean 25.5 days later. This milestone marks the first mission of many that will push NASA closer towards returning to the lunar surface for the first time in over 50 years. In other news, Google has agreed to a $391.5 million settlement with 40 states over location tracking charges. The case goes all the way back to 2018, when news broke that Google continued to track up to 2 billion users' location, even if they opted out. Google would then use this information to target ads to its users to generate billions in ad revenue. Fast forward to May of 2020, when Arizona filed a state action and won, prompting other states to make their own lawsuits. Zooming out, several of the attorney generals are calling this settlement a historic win, with it being the largest multi-state settlement in U.S. history concerning privacy. Next up, in order to stay competitive in the short-form content world, YouTube has increased the duration that music or sounds can be played on YouTube Shorts from 15 seconds to 60 seconds. Due to newly revised licensing deals, YouTube has said that a majority of music on Shorts can now be played for the entirety of a short, which maxes out at 60 seconds as well. YouTube plans to add this functionality over the course of the next couple weeks, with its goal of this new update is to compete with TikTok and Instagram Reels to control the short-form video world. According to YouTube, Shorts are watched by 1.5 billion users every month and get over 30 billion views a day, which they only expect those numbers to grow. On Digital CXO, we have an article looking at delegating tasks using AI tools. Throughout our days, we have to deal with a lot of monotonous tasks, but a lot of these can be automated with AI. Tasks such as processing data or invoice management can be efficiently automated that will improve the accuracy of the tasks as well as overall employee satisfaction. To learn more, go to digitalcxo.com. On DevOps.com, we have an article looking at how Atlassian added several new capabilities to its Jira project management application to make it easier to manage software development. Atlassian has stated that the goal is to make it simpler for DevOps teams to track their performance without having to deploy a separate analytics application. To learn more, go to devops.com. Finally, on Container Journal, we have an article looking at 5 Kubernetes pain points and how to solve them. This article covers topics such as reducing network complexity, easing troubleshooting, managing the infrastructure, and addressing policy-driven customization. To learn more, go to containerjournal.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back here live at KubeCon in Detroit, Cloud Native Con, continuing our coverage. Well, it's day 3 of the event, but day 1 here on the expo floor. Hopefully you hear it well. It's pretty loud. There's a lot of people, and the show floor is really big, but it's spread out. So it's not as dense, which I guess is good for COVID and everything. Anyway, our next guests are 2 folks from a company called Tigera, and they are the folks also behind Project Calico. And let me introduce you to them. On my far right, I have Utpal Bhatt.
Fahad, I'm Fahad.
We messed that up. I apologize. It's live TV. On my near right is Utpal Bhatt. And on my far right is Fahad Rizki.
Yes.
Gentlemen, welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right. So, let's start. Actually, before we jump into Tigera, let's talk about who you guys are. So, Fahad, I apologize, I went wrong name, but what do what's your role at Tigera, and maybe a little bit of your background?
Sure, absolutely. So, again, my name is Fahad Rizki. I'm the VP of Sales here at Tigera. So I head up worldwide sales for the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your background from before Tigera, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in startups and security for my entire career. So before this, I was with a company called Centrify, and then
know them well.
Yeah, and then Encircle before that, and FireEye before that. So
was this Encircle when they were already Tripwire or before Tripwire?
Before Tripwire, so I was there part of the acquisition, and then Tripwire
Really?
acquired
I
it.
had a lot of friends.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where I know you from.
Yeah,
then.
it could be. Yeah.
Andrew
could be.
Storms and
Oh, absolutely.
Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah,
and Abe
yeah.
Kleinfeld. And
Absolutely.
Mike Murray was there.
Oh,
And,
yeah. So you know the folks.
Oh,
there?
I know. Yeah. Well, I also have a history. I've got 30 years in security.
Yeah.
I co-founded a company called Still Secure.
Oh,
And
okay.
we were a competitor actually to Encircle,
Oh, great. Okay.
Tenable,
Oh, yeah.
Foundstone,
Qualys and all.
Wallace.
Yeah.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. Yeah.
Anyway,
absolutely.
excellent, man. Welcome.
Yeah.
Paul, how about you?
My name's Utpal Bhatt, and I'm the CMO of Tigera. Handle most marketing activities there. As far as background goes, I've spent over 20 years in the infrastructure, analytics, and more recently in the security space. Prior to Tigera, I was at an AI and machine learning company called Qubole. And then before that, I was at Neo4j, which is a graph database company.
That's an exciting area.
Yeah, so a lot of experience with open source, and really excited to be here at KubeCon.
Excellent. Well, welcome to both of you. Let's talk a little bit about Tigera, and as I mentioned, there are also the folks behind the open source Calico project. I don't know if you want to start with Tigera, or should we start with Calico?
We can, maybe we can, for the audience, it would be great if we just recap the story so far, and then we can build on top of the story.
Yeah. Great.
So, we're Tigera, we're the creator of Project Calico. So it all started back in 2016, where we introduced Project Calico, an open source project to solve container networking and security needs. And the project has, by far become the most popular and most adopted project, whether, the most recent Datadog study or the CNCF study on the most adopted CNIs, Calico appears right at the top. We are among the top 5 technologies on any container Kubernetes image.
Really?
And we've been downloaded from the Docker images over 1 billion times.
Wow.
More than companies across 166 countries. So it's stupendous
It has
adoption.
a huge base. So let me just be clear: is Calico is it a CNCF project or it's your Tigera?
So Calico is an open source project. It's not part of the CNCF project, but we work very closely with the CNCF team. We are silver members of the CNCF Foundation.
Okay. Sure.
We work very actively, I think a lot of the adoption is from the CNCF community.
Well, this open source CNCF community is such a dynamic.
Yeah.
Kind of.
And then, from then on, maybe Fahad, you want to just take on to the platform side of things, since you have.
Yeah. So, over time, like Utpal said, Calico has become tremendously popular as a CNI. And so what we've done is, over the last few years, we built commercial offerings on top of Calico called Calico Enterprise and Calico Cloud. And, where that adoption initially started was from through the platform teams in these organizations, and these teams were essentially building out their Kubernetes platforms. And what they needed initially, and obviously even more so now, is the networking and the network security aspect of things. So from a platform security and a platform team perspective, we provide a host of use cases and solutions for them, solve a lot of use cases for them, everything from like I said, networking and the network security piece, but within that, if, for example, what we do is we provide things like DNS policy and egress access control. So if anybody needs to access anything securely outside of the cluster, they can, or behind a firewall, they can securely do that, right? We provide very deep observability for that Kubernetes environment, so very deep flow logs, to service graph, deep packet inspection, so very deep observability with Kubernetes context, and not just Kubernetes context, because Calico is such a powerful underlying policy engine, it gives you very deep observability that no other solution can really provide. So very quickly, a platform team can look at your Kubernetes environment, can look at a Calico Enterprise or Calico Enterprise dashboard and see very quickly, what's happening on the network, if something's going wrong, where is something going wrong, quickly pinpoint it and fix it. And also, because we not only detect, we also prevent and mitigate, again, because we're a policy engine. So when we do detect something, we'll recommend policies to say, okay, how do you mitigate this attack or mitigate something that's bad that's happening?
Yep.
So, we provide we essentially, if you think about it for the platform teams, we become the firewall for your Kubernetes environment, right? We essentially become the firewall for that environment, right?
So when we hear a lot about, security, networking, and container Kubernetes environment, you start thinking or hearing about service mesh, right? And that becomes sort of the communication layer for networking and security to work in. The way I'm hearing you describe it, though, is Calico and Tigera sits below the service mesh layer, right on Kube itself.
Yeah,
And
so
working
actually,
in there, or does it? Maybe I got it wrong. I don't know.
It's a great question. So when it comes to like I said, it started off as the container networking and security interface. But what Calico provides is the ability. So when you talk about the service mesh, the primary use cases for a service mesh are security, observability, encryption. So when it comes to those types of capabilities, whether you're looking at it for a single cluster or you're looking at a cluster mesh, Calico can provide that because Calico enables connectivity between the clusters, so pod-to-pod communication. It enables policy, the application of policies all the way from L3 to L7 layers, so even at the HTTP layer, and then it enables cross-cluster observability. So a lot of the functionality that an organization is looking for, let's say if you're deploying a multi-cluster environment where you have microservices running across multiple clusters, and you want to present a single management plane through which you want the services to be visible, Calico can enable you to do that in an operationally much simpler way. We also integrate with service meshes. If organizations want to use service mesh, let's say for traffic shaping or for the core service mesh use cases, but for specifically for security, observability, encryption, Calico does a lot of those. Offers a lot of that functionality. And then one more thing that we do is Calico. Over the years, we have expanded our footprint to cover the entire CI/CD pipeline. So all the way from vulnerability management with image scanning, admissions controllers to KSPM, and then runtime security by looking at your container activity or by your network activity. We can alert you on any type of threat. So our value proposition really is that it's a active security for your entire Kubernetes platform, whether it's that helps you prevent threats from happening or prevent attacks from happening, to detecting the attacks, and then if attacks do happen, mitigating those by deploying mitigating controls to prevent them from becoming into a disaster.
Right.
And the last thing about Calico is done is eBPF is a very hot topic, and Calico supports eBPF. It's one of our primary data planes. And we use a lot of eBPF in our solution as well for a lot of runtime threat detection and observability.
Okay, so let's turn our attention now though to where kind of Calico leaves off and Tigera provides. Right? Where's the value add?
Yeah, so as we were talking about, so Calico open source is primarily addressing your networking
No, I get it.
and your network policy needs. Calico Cloud and Calico Enterprise, which are built on the open source foundation provided by Calico, they provide advanced security, observability, and the cluster mesh capability.
And that's sold more as a service.
Correct.
It's not an open source tool that you're kind of configuring yourself.
Correct. You're correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the main Tigera kind of offering.
Correct. So think of it as, networking. A lot of what we provide for networking is free. It's in the open source domain. A lot of security, observability capabilities and advanced kind of multi-cluster capabilities, those are in the commercial offering.
Got it. All right. Let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about how do people engage with this? How do they get started?
Yeah, so there's several ways. Obviously, they can start off with our website with tigera.io. And, so for example, with Calico Cloud, you can get started very easily through the website. You can, get a 2-week free trial there and get started. And anybody can, go there and sign up, and within 15 minutes, they'll be up and running. That's the easiest way to engage with us. And also, you can go through the website and ask for a demo or contact us, and we'll reach out immediately. Really,
love it.
Yeah,
good stuff. Now, that's really that's for the service. People could go download the open source Calico themselves, install it on their own, and do all that. For the let's call it Calico as a service, Calico Cloud, you still have to install kind of the agents or whatever on your own infrastructure, and then it communicates back to the service. Security issues around that?
No, so the way it works is the management plane that we run is sitting in the cloud, but the data plane is alongside your Kubernetes cluster.
On your own.
Right, and so what we're doing, so that's kind of sitting inside your environment, and then what we're doing is we're collecting the metrics and sending it up to Calico Cloud. So there is no security issue there.
Love it. Excellent. And again, it's tigera.io. Tiger. I'm sorry. They don't hear this at home, and you guys aren't hearing this at home, but there's like a train that goes around here, and it sounds like a car or something.
Yeah.
But thank God the mics mic it out, filter it out. Anyway, it's Tigera, Tigera.io.
that's right.
And that's the place to go get all this information.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you love Calico, you'll love Calico Cloud for your security and observability needs.
Absolutely. Excellent story, guys. Fahad Utpal, thank you for joining us. We're taking a break. We're in Detroit. We're we probably still have another hour or two, right, of coverage today. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another Techstrong TV segment. I have I think it's going to be an interesting interview. Great discussion. I want to introduce you to Hemanth Manda. Hemanth is the head of strategic partnerships for data and AI over at IBM. Hemanth, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So, look, it sounds like a really cool job, head of strategic partnerships for data and AI at IBM. Why don't we start there, though? Give people a little bit, beyond the title, what your role is.
Yeah, it's a very interesting role, Alan. Previously, I was in product management, but this is very cool. I get to work with partners both on the inbound side of the spectrum, where we are working with their products to take them through our go-to-market channel, but more importantly, taking our products through their go-to-market channel, which is what we're going to talk more about it. Also, I get to work with hyperscalers such as AWS and Azure. So it's looking at inbound, outbound, as well as hyperscaler marketplaces.
Excellent. Now, IBM and your team made an announcement, I guess it was back in late October. IBM historically has really helped seed so many different areas in technology, right? I don't think they get a lot of credit for all the code they contributed to Linux, for instance, right? And I mean, name an area. There were usually significant IBM contributions around there somewhere. And this is very much true in the area of AI. And, everything from Watson, which is, I guess, for many of us, the first time AI was real, right, was when we started seeing some of the things Watson was able to do. But recently, IBM made an announcement, again, helping to seed this whole industry. I don't want to steal your story, though. Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. I mean, this is actually a very exciting announcement, and I feel it's going to resonate with a lot of your viewers. Historically, IBM, right, especially around the area of AI, we were focused on applications and solutions, looking at end outcomes, right, whether it is industry specific, such as Watson Health, or horizontal solutions around customer care, Watson Assistant, Watson Discovery, etc. That's what we were historically focused on. But what we announced in October is what we're calling as embeddable AI, which is focused on infusing our foundational AI technologies coming from Watson into applications and solutions made by other software vendors or enterprises, right? Think of this as more of an embed play. And it's extremely critical because I feel like the whole world is moving towards embracing AI. Everyone is building applications and they want to infuse AI. And they have a choice. Either they build this on their own or partner with the likes of IBM to essentially take our foundational technologies and include it within their applications. So that's the gist of what we announced. And we are seeing a huge amount of demand around it.
I would imagine. Well, I want to discuss a couple aspects of this, but let's start with, there were 3 libraries that are initially made available. If you would, why don't we just dive into, not a deep dive because we don't have that much time, but a dive into each of the 3 of them, talk about use cases around them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the 3 libraries we announced were natural language processing, speech to text, and text to speech. And I think all of them are, I believe, are fundamental to most of the AI automation that's happening in applications and solutions today. And we can walk through use cases around all 3 of them.
Go ahead. Give us a few use cases if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So on natural language processing, right, this is about essentially understanding the human language, whether it is sentiment analysis, whether it is basically figuring out what the discussion is about, summarization, categorization, etc. So to dumb it down, right, like one of the use cases we're working with an ISV, I cannot name the ISV because we are still in initial discussions here. Think about documents, right? Think about specifically contracts. What typically happens is you have personal identifiable information in the contracts, such as your name, address, date of birth, social security number, etc. And when you're sharing with partners, you want to identify that PII information and automatically redact it. Right now, it's all manual. So you have to manually go through these contracts, identify what your PII information is, and use a pen to basically redact them before you start sharing them. It's extremely manual, time consuming. What this ISP is doing is working with IBM, leveraging our NLP technology. With the click of a button, they want to identify the PII information and redact it. Obviously, there's some training that happens, and that training is infused into the solution itself. But they're looking at leveraging AI to automate it. So this is one example use case that I can talk about. Obviously, there's a lot more.
Absolutely. Let's get this out of the way now. For people who want to dive deeper into the use cases, into these specific libraries, we'll try to get the exact URL in our notes, but just quickly, where do we start on the IBM site to find that info?
Yeah, so these are available on our website. There is specific our website for natural language processing and speech. Both the detailed use cases, also a trial, a 6-month trial, if they want to try it out themselves. We also have an experience self-service trial, which is you don't need to deploy anything. If you just want to try out the art of the possible, we are also making it available. So all of that is available on our website.
Okay, and we have the URL. We'll try to stick that in the notes there. So before we jump into future plans, I want to talk, a good part of our audience is the developer audience, right? Software developers and DevOps people, cloud native folks. I want to make clear that these libraries, they're not in and of themselves applications. They're libraries, hence the name libraries, right? That developers can incorporate into their applications. So this is really, part of the developer tools, if you will, which, look, IBM's a good part of their bread and butter was always giving developers the tools they need, right, to be successful. Let's talk about how does a developer use these libraries, right? How would we build applications with them?
Yeah, it's a very good question. One of the things that I would like to emphasize is this particular launch right around embeddable AI. It is very much focused on developers because we want to bring AI to developers. And part of that focus is to essentially ensure whatever we are shipping has APIs, has documentation, is developer friendly. And we also have flexibility, right? Because developers would like to basically pick and choose what is best for their specific application or use case. So we have the way we have packaged it, the way we have structured this is by ensuring this is developer friendly. And not only that, we are ensuring that the framework is consistent across our libraries. So if you as a developer would like to include like both NLP and speech, or in the future NLP and time series, the framework and the API structure would remain the same so that it's easy for you to include them. You don't need to go through a learning process or a training exercise to understand how to include one library versus the other.
Excellent. All right. So, in talking off camera, these 3 libraries that IBM has now made available are really just kind of the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have significant plans for future, and we want to expand the set of libraries we offer.
Sure. So I don't want to get you in trouble or me in trouble, but can you give us any insight into kind of time frames for future libraries and what these libraries may be about?
Yeah, absolutely. Alan, so next year we're planning to launch at least 2 or 3 more libraries. Things such as document understanding, which includes OCR and other capabilities to be able to read and understand documents. We are also looking at time series, which is around forecasting, right? Because there are a lot of applications out there which want to predict the future, and they typically leverage time series libraries. So that's something that we are planning to launch. There's also a lot of focus around Watson trust libraries, because the thing about AI is, while it is great, you can automate and predict future, but being responsible, being ethical, and ensuring that trust is infused within AI becomes extremely critical, especially as enterprises and software vendors begin to embrace and adopt and scale AI. So we have a set of libraries around trust that we also would like to commercialize next year or the year after.
Sure. There's so much hype, there's so much buzz around AI. I will tell you, even in our little business here, every day our editorial team is messing around with these AI article generators where you put in a couple of ideas and it writes a story for you, right? And we're watching it closely. You could still separate an AI-generated story from a human, for the most part, from a human-written story. It's not quite there, but it's getting there. There's no doubt about it. Last week, I saw another one, an AI-empowered PR agency. So this PR agency just uses AI to pitch your stories and publish your releases and do everything, kind of like robo-PR. So there's real-world examples. Of course, the whole Watson thing is real, right? But there's also so much overhype and buzz and future talk around AI. Where does this fit on that? Look, it's IBM. You guys can't be BSing it, right? Rubber meets the road here. Have we had people develop applications with these libraries already? If so, can you point to any of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny that you ask, because the genesis of this whole initiative is internal. We've been using, we have 20 plus products that currently include and embed natural language processing. So we've been using this internally for the past few years, and we saw a lot of benefit. Our developers, right, our internal developers saw a lot of benefit from these libraries. And that's when IBM decided there is an opportunity here to basically make this available to external customers as well, who want to obviously leverage this the same way we've been leveraging for the past few years. So this is not buzz. We've been using it. We have tested it out. A lot of our products are being used by thousands of customers that embed these libraries. And all we're doing right now is to make these available externally so that our customers and our partners can also benefit.
I love it. Good stuff. Hamed, I think I've got all the questions. We're about out of time anyway. Is there anything else you wanted to add, though?
I just want to go back on your observation, which is a very valid observation, that there's a lot of buzz around AI. To me, AI is three things and three things only. It's either about predicting the future, which is around forecasting, or about automating things, right? Typically mundane things, but you can also automate complex things if you put enough effort into it. And third is around optimization. So anything above and beyond those three, in my opinion, is pure buzz: forecasting, automation, and optimization. So look at any use case. I think it would fall into one of those three buckets.
That's some great advice. So let's hit them again. Automation, forecasting, optimization.
Yeah.
Those are the three things where AI is real today and we should be looking at. Excellent advice. Hamed, hey, this is great news from IBM. I can't wait to see the next libraries coming out, and I can't wait to see people actually using these libraries and incorporating them into their applications. So it'll be exciting. Congratulations to you and the whole team there. Keep us posted.
Thank you, Alan, and thanks for having me.
My pleasure. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be back in just a minute.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Techstrong Women, where we feature amazing women doing amazing things in tech. I'm Jody Ashley, executive producer here at Techstrong, and I'm joined by my co-host Tracy Reagan today. Very excited to be here. But before I introduce today's guest, I want to give you a quick update about what's going on here at Techstrong TV. Coming up on December 16th, you won't want to miss the DevOps Experience virtual event. And yes, it's almost 2023. So be sure to mark your calendars for our annual Predict virtual event on January 12th. You can register for all our events by going to techstrongtv.com, and be sure to tune in to techstrong.tv every day for great shows and interviews. Hey, Tracy, what are you thinking about today? What do you want to talk about?
Jody, you always do such a good job of that. I want to talk about heroines today, especially with our guest. I feel like she's a heroine. But have you noticed that, I don't know, Jody, if you're into fantasy movies? Have you watched House of Dragon?
Do you know who my husband is?
I figured so. Have you noticed the series that are coming out that are highlighting women as heroine?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we have House of Dragon. We have the Princess Rhaenyra and her aunt, the Princess, I think it's Rhaenys. And then we have, and then we have in The Lord of the Rings, we have our elf. I think her name is Galadriel.
Yeah.
And she's super, super powerful. And then on the totally opposite side of the spectrum, we have The Great, which we're learning about in a very hilarious show, Catherine the Great.
I haven't gotten to watch that yet.
You're going to have to. You're going to have to.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited that both the House of, I know this has nothing to do with technology, but I'm still excited that both of those two big time, fantasy series are highlighting women as the central characters. And even in House of Dragon, we have Alison Hightower. Now she has to, she's not really the bad woman. She just is not as supported, maybe some of the fans want her to win the battle, but she is still a very strong woman who started out kind of innocent. Now, I don't know. I first started really getting into learning about Elle from, I can't think of the show. It's the Stranger Things.
Oh, yes.
And Elle was such an amazing female character. She had that innocence, but she was super, super powerful, and she had to find her voice. And in all of these shows, it's taking us through that journey of women learning to find their voice.
Right.
Which I think is so important, especially in technology. I mean, I can't even emphasize how many times I've been in meetings where it's a couple of women who really have the knowledge, and they sit back and they don't say anything because they're in a room full of men. And I always tell people, women, we have to find our voice. And I think those programs have really taught us, it's teaching us, and it's teaching the younger women and younger girls who are watching that to find your voice. So I kind of like to keep that as the theme here, because our guest today, and I'll let you, Jody.
No, go ahead. You're there.
Well, Elena I will let Elena do the work of introducing herself, but she is certainly a heroine when it comes to women and teaching women to code, and women, not just in the United States, but across the planet. So Elena, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about finding your voice?
Hi, I'm Elena Percival. I'm CEO and co-founder of Women Who Code, which, as you mentioned, it's the largest and most active community of diverse women technologists in the world. So when I say that, we're serving over 300,000 members across 147 countries. And when I say we're the most active, come visit our website. We've got an average of 5 free technical events every single day throughout the year. So we have whatever technology area that you're interested in. And Tracy, your kind of speaking to heroines really hit me today, because I've personally been in mourning over the past week or so, because my absolute favorite show when I was a child was Murder, She Wrote. And
I know.
Me too.
I know.
Yeah.
And so I've been actually watching it this week, and I'm so proud of my youthful self that I chose this smart woman forward
Yes.
heroine to be my favorite show.
Oh, wow.
I know. It's so sad to lose those, those older women who kind of charted a course for us. And then on a personal note, today's a very interesting day. This is being recorded on 10/19/22, which happens to be my mother's birthday.
Oh,
literally 100 years ago today.
No.
Yeah. So she would have been 100 years old. And it's sort of weird. But she was an inspiration to me. She, I wanted to go to school and study history. And she was like, no, you're not doing that. You're going into some kind of STEM or engineering. You're not going to go study history.
That's the same thing Tara said last time. Tara Hernandez, our last guest, was like, they wouldn't pay for college if I did what I wanted to do.
Yeah, they wouldn't. I had the same situation. But she was my heroine. So yeah, it is sad to see those people leave the planet.
It is. And my mom, growing up, my parents adopted me when they were in their late 40s. And so she was much older. By the time I was a teenager, people thought they were my grandparents, but she always Murder, She Wrote, and all the Perry Mason. I grew up watching all that stuff with her. So I had the same reaction you did, Elena, when it just made me think of my mom and how much I missed her and watching all that stuff growing up, and drives my family crazy now because I'm such a mystery buff. I can figure everything out like before it happens. And my husband will just look at me and go, freak. So that was a huge, huge loss this week for sure.
So, Elena, why don't you give us a little bit about your background? Tell us how what did the young Elena look like?
Yeah, so I wound my way to my current path, just like I really think most people do in their lives. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm actually living here now. And when I graduated from university, I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to live abroad. I wanted to learn a foreign language. And it's very difficult to get a job in a foreign country if you don't already know the language. So I got a congressional scholarship to go and spend a year in Germany. And so I was learning the language and building my network, making connections. And I ended up getting a job at Puma, the performance wear company. And so one of the things that I would do when I was there, because I didn't immediately get my dream job, I would go over to different teams at the end of my day and say, hey, what are you doing? Could I help you with something? And so I ended up getting promoted onto a team that I had kind of gotten really interested in pretty quickly. And so my next role in the organization was overseeing or product manager for our niche products, which is all the non-core competency products. Like Puma was selling a folded bike for a while, and the stores don't know how to do that. Greece, it's a vehicle, and so we needed to work with the legal team, and so it did a couple of things. It had me managing up, which is really a learning experience and very much correlates to having a volunteer-led organization, because you can't tell the CEO, the CFO, you can't tell the head of retail, you have to do this and you have to do it now. Same with volunteers. You have to take people on the journey. You have to really get them to understand why and find what their motivators are and build the path. And so that was a real learning experience for me, in the early part of my career. After that, I did an MBA. So I had been living in Germany for 4 years. I went back and did a dual degree MBA that took me to 4 continents. So I was very globally focused in the early part of my career and in my education path. And so when I finished that, it was 2008. I was so lucky to find a job, but I found a job at a really small women's performance footwear company that was launching the first ever women's specific volleyball and basketball shoe. So I'm at this tiny company. Social media is like picking up as like a way of doing business. And, Nike and Mizuno are our immediate competitors. So I have to think outside of the box for how to like launch these products into the market. And so it was really a learning experience transitioning from, a traditional product company that I did have some unique experiences with to a small company that was run more like a startup, using more different ways of building this traditional product company. And then I had the opportunity to move to the Bay Area. And it was one of those things where it was on my list. It was like, of 5 cities, if I'm going to move, get a chance to move to San Francisco, let's do it. And I got out there and I hit a wall. To be honest, I had a really strong career in kind of traditional product up until that point. And people looked at me and they were like, Puma, you mean the shoe company? That's not Google. That's not Microsoft. That's not Facebook. And so I started learning to code and had side projects and was living the San Francisco kind of life of really upskilling myself to be able to speak the technology language and build my tech credibility. So I eventually went to a startup that got acquired. And so I earned my tech credibility, but I was throughout that time, getting involved in the tech community, and Women Who Code was starting as a meetup group at the time. And I found that my background in organizational management and community building actually led to driving this movement and growing and creating sustainability around this organization. And so I took a job at after the company was acquired at a top executive recruiting firm, and they were allowing me to be the head of developer outreach. So I was talking to CTOs and vice presidents of engineering and directors of engineering and seriously funded founders constantly. And I realized that fewer than 5% of the people getting these game-changing, the Series A CTO of LinkedIn, these life-changing roles were women, fewer than 5%. And so I started learning from the people that I was connecting with every day about what they were doing inside their career, what they were doing outside of their career, what they were doing to navigate and find success, and how that was translating differently for women. And I started bringing that into Women Who Code as part of our programming. And that's when our mission around really empowering women to excel in technology careers came about, and not just, teaching women to code or teaching girls to code. Because what was happening at the time is the world started talking about, the media was saying, we need to teach girls to code. We need to teach women to code. But we were a community of women in the industry and already coming up against these barriers of bias. And one of those was constantly needing to prove yourself and being viewed as more junior than you actually were. So if someone or Women Who Code didn't elevate the conversation to include women in the tech industry and their needs, we actually ran a risk of having this amazing conversation of, teach women to code, teach girls to code, actually harming the women in the industry. And so that's when I realized, hey, this is important. Women all over the world deserve to have this. And we need to start elevating our voice and the needs of women in the industry alongside teaching girls to code and teaching women to code, because the easiest and fastest way to create greater equality among women and girls in the tech industry is by supporting the incredible talent in the market already today.
Exactly. And we have such a gap right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the area that I'm, DevOps, which has been my career for the last 20 some odd years, you can't even find people to do the work. You literally can't find people to do the work. There just is a huge gap. And I hear discussion about more automation and AI, like Copilot, Microsoft's building Copilot. It's going to make coding much easier because it's going to be a lot of kind of like snippets that you can use to build things. So we're changing from coding to being able to put together a puzzle basically with existing pieces. And I feel like that this is an opportune time for women to step in because there is such a gap. But, and community building is essential. I love that you brought that up. But I run an open source community, open source project called Ortelius. And I, every day, am looking for women. I like literally stalk women on LinkedIn. To see if they'll be, you and me. I stalk women on LinkedIn to look to see if they'd be interested in joining the open source community. And I still need ladies. I just don't. I can't get them to stick around. And the guys know that that there'll be a meeting and there'll just be one female coder in there, and then she disappears. So it's been a challenge, and it continues to be a challenge. Any suggestions on how we fix that?
You should give a talk at Women Who Code.
I would love to.
Ding, ding.
Get your message out to the over 300,000 members in our community. But I think something that you said really strikes or really resonates with what we see and what we are really working to fight against. And that's that they disappear. They're there. But right now, about 50% of technical women in their careers drop out at around the 10-year mark, right when they're poised, when they should be accelerating in their career path. And that's because they're coming up against kind of biases in their career. Throughout their career, you get on a bad project. Maybe it's there's a bad team member or bad team leader, or, you see your peers who have less experience, less qualifications, getting the promotions, and you're not the one getting the promotions. And so what we see and hear women doing is hearing messages like, oh, you're so good at really working and bringing people onto your projects. Have you thought about recruiting? Instead of saying, oh, we should promote this person, or, oh, you're so good about talking about the product. Have you thought about marketing? Like I literally had someone with a master's in CS from Stanford encouraged to take a marketing path at a technology company, and their male counterparts would absolutely never hear that message. And it feels encouraging at the time because it's like, oh, you're so good at this, you should do that. But the message that needs to be heard is you're actually exhibiting leadership skills, and we should be harnessing those and promoting you.
Well, don't you find that just by virtue of some of our personality traits as women, that it's taken as a negative? As an example, my daughter is an actor and she's a director, and she's become an intimacy director, which is this brand new emerging field in the industry of film and theater and stage and opera. And she's busting her butt all through the pandemic to learn this, to get this new skill so that she can work, because she couldn't work at all. And she did a debrief the other day with one of the theater companies, which I won't name, in Minnesota. And the two women that she worked with, the female director's feedback to her through another person, not even one-on-one, was that she was too bubbly. And I was like, she's 27 years old, and her whole job is to make people comfortable on the set of a production with the intimate parts of being in a theater, opera, not just the sexual parts, but just some people don't want to be touched on their arm or their shoulder. And you need to think about these things before you do them. And she was told in a job where making people comfortable that she was too bubbly by a female director. And I was like, a man would never be told he was too bubbly.
Yeah.
I was like, what the heck is wrong here? Because it's women doing it to other women. And she was just like, she has a great cohort of people that support this job she's doing because it's new. And she went to them and they're all like, Just move on. But it's
Yeah,
crazy that we do it to each other too.
Yeah, you brought up an important point. This isn't saying, when we're talking about this, this is ingrained in our culture and something that we need to overcome culturally. It isn't all men. It isn't all women. It's the way women are kind of viewed, the way they're nudged, the way they're told to succeed or not succeed. One of the big things that we do at Women Who Code is trying to overcome the social barrier to women talking about their successes. So if a woman talks about, hey, I was on Techstrong Women and, I'm on here with all of these other great talented people. I deserve to be there. I sound like I'm bragging. Whereas on the male counterpart can talk about the successes that he had just a part of. I got mentioned on Techstrong Women.
Woohoo, I'm famous.
And it's socially acceptable to really drive forward your career successes. And so that's a bit of a comical example, but what it really hit me when I was speaking with a director of engineering at a company. And I said, hey, it's a little more difficult for women to talk about their career successes. It's a little more difficult for society to hear us do it. And she was like, oh, Elena, you're right. I'm actually senior director of engineering now, and I've been embarrassed to update my LinkedIn profile.
Oh, that's the saddest thing ever.
No.
It is really so sad.
And she has the legitimacy of a title, a pay increase, probably a company-wide announcement. Whereas if you've just written stellar code or done contributed to a project in a significant way, the barrier to you championing the role that you had actually holds you back in your career. Because in her circumstance, where she had all of these external factors saying that she deserved to have this, I don't know to invite her to join my board because, she is so senior, or to invite her to be a keynote at my conference, or, you don't know to have her come and speak on your show. And so when you think about the day-to-day things that you're not championing, the week by week, the month by month, it adds up significantly. And so Women Who Code has a thing called Applaud Her. And we're trying to create social change around talking about your career successes. And I'll just give you one more example of how difficult it is. We had one of our leaders email it out to their whole area mailing list, so probably a couple thousand people. Hey, celebrate your career successes. Crickets. Nobody submitted something. The next email said, hey, celebrate the career success of a woman who is around you. 200 immediately within a day responses, because
oh, wow,
it was so difficult. All of those 200 people, had career successes, but didn't elevate them, didn't feel comfortable to share them out, didn't feel comfortable.
It goes back to what I was saying. We struggle to find our voice.
Yeah.
We really do. We struggle to find our voice and to, open our mouths and say, hey, look what I just did.
Yeah. Because we're socially and culturally conditioned that it's not okay to do so. So we have trouble doing it, and we have trouble hearing it, whether we're a man or a woman.
That is an amazing example and shocking. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely a real thing. Something I wanted to ask you about the globalness of what you're doing. I've seen a lot in the news lately where women in some of the countries where they're being repressed, that they're secretly learning how to code. Right? These women and girls are doing this in all sorts of countries around the world. How far is your reach? Can you give us some examples of where this is happening, other than, things we would think about normally?
Yeah. So we're in 147 countries. So we have members all over the world. We don't discriminate against members based on their governments. But, we have an extremely active community in the Ukraine. And so it's been very difficult, over far too long, the beginning of this year. And so when they've managed to stay active and still updating us. And, we know that some of them are involved in cybersecurity operations to support the Ukraine. And, we also have members that are in Iran right now. So we recently announced a statement in support of our members and the women of Iran who are continuously protesting against the oppression.
They have found their voice.
Yeah,
they have found their voice.
My heroes. These women are amazing.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's what I was wondering. And they saw when we pulled out of Afghanistan and all these Afghani women and girls who were allowed to be in school that suddenly got shoved back in. But so many of them are still finding ways to get past the barriers that the governments are creating. And this is a field that they can do that in. There's not a lot of those out there, I would think, that allow women to, like, if I can get access to the internet, I can learn to code. I can create a place for myself. It's so amazing. I think I love hearing about it. It's great that you guys are having that kind of global reach.
And it represents a tremendous opportunity as well, because you can use a VPN. You can be behind the protections of the internet, and you can work remotely. So, where in areas where women are oppressed or prevented from working in offices, technology presents a tremendous opportunity for career paths.
So how can we hire some of your women?
So Women Who Code has a job board. So if you're posting jobs on any job board, it's a highly niche community. Your company should absolutely be doing it. But really, it's important to actually be supporting the work that Women Who Code does. So we don't charge membership, but it costs us $27 to provide a year of free programming to each of our members. And we heavily rely on partners who we, create partnership agreements for them to support the work that we do. And it's important to be authentically supporting the community, not just taking from the community or showing up and heading out. And so, becoming a partner to Women Who Code, supporting our events and the program that we're doing and providing to build a sense of belonging, increase knowledge, and develop leadership skills among women in the tech industry is critical. We could not do it without our partners and donors.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Well, I'm definitely going to reach out to you about getting some of your women to join our open source community.
I hope they will.
I hope so too. We did have a few women from Africa join for a while. They ended up getting jobs, and then they got so focused on their jobs they weren't contributing anymore. But it was great to have supported them. We did a lot of education around, Google Cloud build and getting them to be more kind of DevOpsy engineers. And they both went off and got jobs in the area.
But that's an utter success story. Even contributing to the open source project, it's the absolute best outcome.
And people don't know that about open source. People think open source is really smart people getting together to code, but in reality, it is a training platform. It's an education platform of a real project to work on. And we use it that way. We use it as much as we can. In fact, now we're doing some work around blockchain, and we got a grant for it. So we get to pay people who are working on that part of the project. So it encouraged them to learn more. And I'd love to have more women doing that.
Yeah. Well, we have a blockchain track at Women Who Code, so we should definitely amplify that opportunity to the community.
That would be great.
What are the age groups for Women Who Code? Like what kind of?
We don't discriminate based on age, but the average age is about 30.
Okay. So do you use any of the Girls Who Code organizations do you outreach to those as well? Because I know those are becoming super popular too. My granddaughter is learning to code. She's 12 and she thinks it's a lot of fun. Her brother was trying it and he was 14 and she's like, well, she's one of those, I want to do it. If he can do it, I can do it. So yeah.
I applaud your granddaughter. We've certainly had younger people join in. You know, we don't check ages at the door, but we've also sent mentors, of course, to Technovation, Girls Who Code, Black Girls Code, all over the world, because it is a part of the pipeline. And I'm teaching Women Lead in Technology at Georgia State University this semester, and I tell my students, go to these industry events because you're just going to connect with people who can tell you, what the good companies are to work for. They can introduce you, they can help you, and you can get to know what technical what you get to know the technologies that industry is using. And so it's such a great gateway for younger people to be able to network, even though, they are going to be a little bit further along in their career path. Typically, Women Who Code is a great place for people who are still early in their careers or looking for inspiration.
That's amazing.
Well, everybody's early in their career, in my opinion, when it comes to technology.
I know it evolves so much.
It evolves so much. We're all learning. And I usually tell women that because sometimes I think women feel like they have to have all the answers before they go into a field. And I tell them, you will never have all the answers. And it's okay to ask questions. No one ever looks dumb in software by asking a question.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. It's, I try and emphasize that as well, that it's continuous learning. And the exciting thing about it is, the programming language that you're using is probably only a few years old. And so you're only going to be a couple years behind the most senior people. And it's probably going to change in another year or two, and you will be right at the beginning with everyone else. And so there's really not a bad time to get involved, get started in a technology career path.
And I think that ability to pivot is super critical in this industry. But it sounds like you're pretty good at pivoting yourself. In your story, it sounds like you pivoted quite a few times. And that's another area that I think women really have to learn is it's okay to let go of something you've worked on for a while and maybe pivot a little bit, because you'll find a different answer when you do so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and it feels like this organization really represents that, right? Women who are figuring out, thought they knew what they wanted to do, and now they're finding something new, and they're like, "Wow, this looks like something I can do." And I have a couple of friends who started learning it again during the pandemic because they couldn't work at their jobs, and they want to be able to have more access to being a mom. And it's like this great way for them to work from home. Their hours are flexible, and they can do that and still, not have to be in an office all the time.
Yeah. And our community is typically already technical. So they're typically already in technology careers, but kind of speaking to always needing to learn, there's, hey, I want to get a bit deeper into data science. Oh, I want to get a bit deeper into DevOps. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. That's a huge, tremendous area that people should be focused on, and another area where we need to see more women pursuing. Because when I think about who's going to be leading companies in the future, it's going to be people who have an understanding of data security, of cybersecurity, the same way that people historically have had an understanding of laws and accounting, because it's going to be such a critical area of success that companies need to have.
That's awesome.
Yes, especially right now. I'm on the board of the Open Source Security Foundation, and the conversations there, boy, there's so many things to fix right now. We have in terms of our infrastructure, it's pretty leaky.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting to the end of our time together here. And Elena, I want you to give us a good wrap up of how how women can reach out. Give us some websites. We can add those to the posting when we air this amazing conversation we've had, and give you guys some access to what you're doing through our site.
Yeah, we are Women Who Code everywhere. So womenwhocode.com. We have a tremendous database on YouTube of content. We're Women Who Code on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Connect with us. And I'm at Elena on Twitter.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us.
Yes.
What a great conversation. It's so exciting to see what's going on. Yeah, Trace?
Oh my goodness. Yes. I really enjoyed this. We don't necessarily always talk about women on Techstrong Women. We want to have these kinds of sessions, but this one I think was particularly important and relevant for today, and getting women into an industry that needs you. We need you. We need the manpower, and we can now call it woman power.
The human power.
We need the human power, whatever we're calling it, the they power.
Well, thanks for everybody. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Techstrong Women. We'll look for you guys back on Techstrong TV soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, welcome to another episode on our Techstrong TV interview. I'm Mike Rothman, General Manager of Techstrong Research and Chief Strategy Officer of Techstrong Group. I'm very pleased to be joined here by Frank Kim, who is CISO or one of the field CISOs or, partial CEO. You can explain what your exact title is for YL Ventures. YL Ventures, if you haven't heard of them, is a very exciting, seed stage venture fund, funds, I guess we should say plural. And they find very cool technology, security technology in Israel and help to productize that and make it into a thriving company. They've had a number of different outcomes thus far. So again, very exciting tech, very exciting partnership and company. And I'm pleased to have Frank here. So Frank, why don't you just introduce yourself? If I mischaracterized anything about YL, don't be bashful. Just correct me and say, Mike doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. So, feel free to correct me on that front.
Well, hey, Mike, first of all, thanks a lot for having me. And hey, as you maybe inadvertently mentioned, titles, don't really matter. But, hey, I guess we'll get that out of the way. I am the CISO in residence at YL Ventures, helping entrepreneurs and founders get from idea to eventually company, to eventually product, to eventually seed stage investment and beyond. And I'm also a fellow at the SANS Institute, where I lead the cybersecurity CISO leadership curriculum and the cloud security curriculum as well. So helping both founders and students in their journeys to securing their organizations.
Yeah, that's great. And really, what I think makes sense, given your background, Frank, and a lot of what you're doing today, is really to kind of hone in on this concept of, what is a security program for a smaller company, right? When do you start it? And whether it's one of the startups that you're working with, kind of within YL, whether it's, some of the folks that you're advising and working with on the, SANS Institute side, that's one of the questions I get a lot, right? From practitioners who maybe aren't full-time security. And they're like, when do I start? What kind of tooling do I need? What kind of policies do I have to put in place? Do I have compliance, issues that I've got to deal with? So I love to just get, to kind of start with a pretty broad one, right? Your perspective about, what, where, and when, right? From a security program standpoint for, whether they're startups or smaller companies that maybe haven't invested in that thus far.
Yeah, sure thing. It's you raised a key point there because, as a CISO, as a security leader going in, we might have some of these preconceived notions sometimes of how we want to build out the program. But it really is stage dependent. It depends on the stage at which the organization is at, and therefore where the business is at. I had an engagement with a company, a $1 billion plus valuation company that a little while ago, and they had a CISO. But long story short, that CISO wasn't lasting very long. And I was talking to the CEO, and she said, hey, I kind of feel like the CISO kind of changed the script a little bit on me once they came on board. And even though we've gotten a lot of funding, the stage of our business is not one where we can invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in an EDR solution, hundreds of thousands of dollars in other solution. And the problem was, well, in that particular case, the CISO didn't realize what stage the business was at. It was kind of taking that traditional, if you will, enterprise playbook and trying to adapt it, apply it to a business where it didn't really make sense. And, they didn't realize at that stage that CISO's job was probably more 80% sales enablement, marketing enablement, customer support, things like that. And whatever it might be, 20, 30% on actually building out the capabilities themselves. Now, the problem is that can quickly shift, right? From 6 months, 12 months, within a year, as the company changes, as the company grows. But that's the challenge that we as CISOs have, is adapting to those changing market dynamics.
That's right. And I do have a little bit of experience in this, having started up a number of my own, kind of companies. I go back and forth between research and, corporate things because I'm professional ADD, right? I just get bored and I got to go do something else and build things on that front. But really, kind of to me, the catalyst for a lot of small companies to really start investing in the program is when customers start asking you about it. And again, it makes no difference what business you're in. If you're, fintech or, kind of a smaller financial type organization, you're going to have regulators that maybe ask those questions. But somebody's asking a question about how do you store data, right? How do you protect it? If you're doing business with one of the big, kind of global technology companies, they've got, whether it's an online questionnaire or some friggin', 30 tab spreadsheet that you got to work through on that front. But to me, that is usually an indication once it starts getting in the way of your deals, that's the time where you really have to start thinking about, all right, not only do I have to start, kind of implementing a bunch of these controls, I actually have to start documenting them as well.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned that 1,000 questionnaire, right? The 1,000 tab questionnaire. And that's certainly one of those things and really going back to kind of the stage of the company, we see this from both sides is, hey, that might mean that the company needs to get a SOC 2 type 2. That might mean you might need to think about in the future ISO 27001, depending on the client base you're targeting. It could be something like a FedRAMP certification. But on the flip side, for our portfolio companies, for example, as they're growing, as they're scaling to Series A and beyond, and eventually, hopefully, bigger things, well, the question then becomes, well, when do you bring in a full-time CISO? And when does that actually make sense? And it's usually exactly what you said, time to exactly this, in terms of not just the marketing story and the sales enablement and so on, but hey, well, what's the work that needs to be put in place to be ready for that SOC 2 type 2? What's the work that needs to be ready to, downstream further along, get ready to actually go public in terms of the SEC filing requirements and things like that. So there are some of those hard and fast rules, but it requires, the CISO to be adaptable to figure out, well, what is needed at that particular time.
Yeah. And I mean, having been through that process, and it was a long time ago, to be clear. So we have much different reporting kind of requirements, than when I was doing it. But, kind of the scrutiny that's on public companies is just not that interesting to me. Right. So, you also have to be prepared for the fact that, the individual you have leading the program initially as you're starting to build it out may not be, kind of the same person as you, continue to grow it. So not unlike what you see with entrepreneurs, right? At some point they may, kind of yield to, more professional management on that front. I think we have a similar type of, situation in security, that there are folks that are well suited to, again, I think as you said, your first story, right? Kind of that CISO that came in with an enterprise mindset to, roughly a startup company. That enterprise mindset is absolutely critical when you get there. Right. And if you're a mismatch, right, you either have a startup CISO who's much more about, kind of the show, right, the external, piece of it rather than the policy and the team and all of that. If you put them in a situation where the company's ramping up to go public, that doesn't end very well either. Right. So it really is making sure that you've got, kind of the right folks in the right chairs at the right time. I think Jim Collins said that many months ago.
I've read Good to Great too many times. So yeah, that resonates with me. But exactly right. Some CISOs are post-breach specialists. Some CISOs are sustaining CISOs. And as you said, some CISOs are startup CISOs that have more of that entrepreneurial bent and really understand, hey, well, what it takes in terms of being that business enabler in terms of solving problems for both today and tomorrow, for sure.
Let's talk about some of the challenges that these folks have, right? Let's kind of start with I don't know, one that may be a little timely and somewhat high profile, right? But ransomware. All right. So when you're getting in and starting to work and engaging with customers or a client, right, or a company, I mean, however you want to phrase it, right? How do you start to build that out, right? And to what degree, you mentioned, well, EDR, right? It may be too early for EDR, but there's got to be some base defenses that are in there to protect, the devices. But what I found with ransomware is, it's a process thing. Right? When and how do I start to figure out, what the proliferation is, right? When and how do I understand how much of my data is actually at risk? What provisions do I make to possibly pay the ransom? And I'd love to, get your perspective on whether that's a really, bad idea or a necessary evil, in this, kind of environment. But if we take that as kind of the stalking horse, how do you start to take this, we have this, kind of squishy, mythical program and make it into something that becomes pretty tangible for, kind of companies that are trying to figure out how to behave in those situations?
Yeah, well, kind of let's take it in two prongs here. First is maybe a little bit more technical, and then we'll focus a little bit more on the business. On the technical side, it depends on the organization. If it's a cloud first company that's doing things from scratch, a relatively new organization, the good news, in my opinion, is that there's a lot of cloud capabilities that help make it easier to get some of these processes in place in terms of recovery, resiliency, availability, and so on. But from a business perspective, yeah, that's the bigger question. We see all of those headlines all the time of company X, healthcare company Y, other company Z. They've gone ahead and paid the ransom. And that is an indication that, well, one, they didn't have the processes in place. They didn't have the backups in place. They didn't have the data anyplace else. And the cost of not having that data, of course, was much greater than the cost of paying the ransom. So it became just really, just a business transaction, right? Yep. And that's the risk trade-off. Is a lot of times, for better or for worse, security leaders, we don't realize necessarily that our job is not to implement technical controls. Our job is to manage information risk. And that's helped to manage and mitigate the cyber risk that the organization might be facing. Sure, ideally, we'd have those preventative controls in place and processes in place ahead of time. But really, to get a seat at the table, we need to understand, hey, well, when do we pay the ransom? What do we advise or not? And truth be told, we're not going to be the one making the decision on paying the ransom, but we've got to be giving the good advice that gives the accurate description of what the trade-offs actually are.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing I would add to, kind of fleshed out a little bit more, Frank, is you don't want to be having that discussion with your board of directors
while it's happening.
So those are, when you're a new CISO or when you're, first starting to build the program, those are the kind of questions or scenarios or tabletops or whatever technique you're going to use in order to make sure that you've got that playbook, at least discuss. I mean, you're going to deal with it on a situation by situation basis, right? That's obvious. But the reality is, if you haven't even brought that up, right, and then you've got somebody saying it's going to be, X number of Bitcoin, in order to free up your data, again, that's not when you want to be having that discussion, with folks. So we've got a couple minutes left. So, I mean, just real quick, bring off the top of your head. And I love to do these, kind of just stream of consciousness type thing, right? If you're an early security practitioner or security practitioner in a company that, really doesn't have as built out a security program as, you'd love to see, what are the first three things that you do?
Hey, I'm really looking at identity, right? Looking at who has access to what are the various systems, and especially in a newer, smaller company, a lot of it is the cloud-based footprint, the SaaS services, the public cloud services that are largely being used, getting an understanding of the footprint. And it really all boils down to the basics, but in a different context. What's the inventory, right? Where do we actually have exposure? And a lot of times security people, we ask the question, well, ask the executives, what keeps you up at night? That's not a horrible question, but I don't think that's the best question. I'd much prefer to go in and say, well, what are your most important processes? What do you think are the most important assets? Honing in a little bit on it a little bit better so that I can then decipher, where is the cyber risk for the org? And does that match up? Is that what you see as well? And having more of that business conversation around things.
I love the business conversation. The question I usually ask is, If you were to get fired, what is the scenario that kind of got you there, right? Because to me, that's pretty indicative of stuff that's important to those folks. So it's just a different, kind of flavor on that question. It's just when you're talking to somebody, it's a lot more tactile when they think about, oh, I'm going to get canned if this, kind of situation happens. But I love, kind of the idea of focusing on visibility because, again, especially when you're new or you haven't thought about it this way, understanding data sprawl, especially in this, age of SaaS, is critical. And I'll also put an 100% behind IAM. Right. And as folks move to the cloud, they don't realize kind of the foundational aspect that, kind of not just the identities, but the entitlements that go along with those, how that plays in terms of how your resources in the cloud are used. So I think that is really a great list of things to do when you're getting started. I think, again, the idea of thinking about the program, within the construct of, kind of whatever, matching up the maturity of the company, with the type of security program that you need. And then ultimately being able to think and have discussions proactively about things like ransomware to make sure that, you don't get surprised if you do get hit at any given time. So I think those are, really just fantastic ideas and guidance for all of you that are out there. Thank you, Frank. Did I miss anything, in that little summary or did that kind of?
Hey, no, that's a great summary. And I will just kind of try to put a headline on it and say, hey, to me, it's all about being a security business leader, not just a technical security leader. And that's exactly what we're talking about. So yeah, I appreciate the conversation, Mike.
Yeah, you bet. So Frank Kim, CISO in residence at YL Ventures. I really appreciate the time. And thank everybody for listening to another episode of Techstrong TV. So now we'll send it back to the studio.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond, CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
Hey everyone, happy Thursday. Cody J. Brown here with some programs happening tomorrow and next week at Techstrong Learning. So our loan program tomorrow kicks off at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. The impact of low code, no code on DevOps. We'll dive into building apps using tools that will write the code for you. The new challenge is keeping that code integrated with your existing software and ensuring those applications are properly deployed, updated, and secured. And looking into next week, we are celebrating a holiday here in the US, so our only program is kicking off Monday, November 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern. Container Journal is hosting a roundtable on the Kubernetes roadmap. Kubernetes is constantly evolving, and along with the enhancements, we see deprecations. If you find yourself running multiple clusters, running multiple versions of Kubernetes, chances are your APIs are not being regularly updated. You will not want to miss these critical insights that could make the difference in maintaining your risk exposure. So, like I mentioned, we are on holiday for the rest of the week, but we do have more Techstrong learning experiences lined up throughout the rest of the year, and of course we do have our catalog of on-demand programs waiting for you. So, have a great Friday, a better weekend, and a happy Thanksgiving.
Hi, everybody. Mike Rothman here, General Manager, Techstrong Research, for another edition of Techstrong Research Review. But you know what? This one is going to be a special episode. Why? Because we are on the precipice of the Thanksgiving holiday, which kicks off really, kind of the holiday season in a lot of places around the world. And Mitch and I just wanted to get together and talk a little bit, not about trends or about news or about, we have plenty of time to do that. We do this show weekly, we wanted to give thanks, right? We wanted to really talk about what we're happy about, right? What we think is important and impactful to kind of our jobs and really to our lives. So that's what we're going to do today. Mitch, how are you? Who are you? And then how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Mike. Good to be here with you. Of course, Mitch Ashley, principal with Techstrong Research and also CTO with Techstrong Group. And it's a great time to reflect. And we're always talking about what's the next best thing, or what's this challenge, or how are we going to tackle that? And just as I was thinking about what I might bring up today, it's kind of a dumb, simple thing, but I really do appreciate it. I'm thankful that we are able to get in person today, whether it's going to have coffee, meeting with some people, whether it's traveling to a conference, and actually doing some business at a conference. I kind of forgot about that. That's actually
as we sit on Zoom.
As we sit on Zoom. Yeah, exactly. Well,
we can be thankful for the fact that everybody else.
We have been in the same office now and again, so we couldn't happen.
And I've been traveling around a little bit. I've been doing, kind of a couple of conferences here and there. And it really has been great, right? I mean, you forget about the importance of human contact, right? You forget about, the relationships that you've built over many years in the business. So I will concur with that. I think that it is really just, again, great that we're able to get back together and, kind of do our thing after a couple of years of not that, right? A couple of years of not that. So definitely thankful for that. My first foray is going to be the fact that I'm here now, right? I'm here, I'm recording this thing. I've joined, Techstrong Group and Techstrong Research, and I am really thankful for that. It's been a lot of fun so far. I've learned a lot. Right. I did not have a lot of background I did DevSecOps, right. But a lot of the nuances of DevOps and kind of starting to dig into cloud native infrastructure and just, the critical importance of all of those, areas of focus for companies and really having digital transformation as, kind of the mechanism to, start to become the catalyst for really a wave of innovation, a wave of investment. That's been fantastic. So I'm grateful for the markets that we're in. I'm grateful to be, the company that is really just kind of at the fulcrum of a lot of these technology advancements and innovation that we've seen over the last, 7-8 years. Right, that Techstrong has been around 7-8 years at this point, and really, it's a different environment. We kind of joke about, kind of the velocity in terms of how quickly things are changing, but it's no joke, right, Mitch? Kind of what we see, and when we think about where we were 2-3 years ago to where we are now, and to try to envision, where we'll be in 2 to 3 years from now, it's really, it's getting harder to really prognosticate that because the technology cycles are happening so rapidly nowadays.
It's amazing. And I'm very thankful that you're here too, by the way, Mike. It's great to be working with you and have you at Techstrong, both of your roles, both of your strategy officer and also working on research together. It's interesting because that you say that. When I was at KubeCon, North American Detroit, we did a panel up for the SRE show. And the comments from folks that were on the panel was, last time we were together, it was at a KubeCon, and we were talking about, wouldn't it be great if, and they kind of listed a bunch of things. So this is KubeCon in San Diego and 3 years ago or whatever it was. And come today, and here we are in Detroit, where we were, and a lot of those things had happened. They were like shocked. It really did happen in a matter of 2.5 or 3 years. That's pretty amazing when you think about open source and adoption. And hey, we'd really hope that the vendor community embraces this thing, and it happened, right? It is just kind of shocking. But I like the interconnectedness of our world, right? You can talk about cloud native if you want, but you're not going to talk about it without talking about security and DevOps and cloud infrastructure and legacy applications and how we interconnect with that and software. It's all interconnected, and it just makes it really fascinating, I think.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and again, one of my big disappointments was not being able to get to, you know, KubeCon North America, and obviously I had a little bit of an injury, and I'm thankful for my surgeon who was able to get me in very quickly and fix me up, and you know, I'm rehabbing now and up and around. I don't know if you saw, we were on a meeting today, and I was, you know, traipsing around without my crutch. So yeah, we're making progress on that front. But it is, I mean, it really is an interconnected environment, and we can't take that for granted, right? Because for so long, Mitch, right, you know, the two of us were not spring chickens, right? So you know, we were there when these silos like couldn't be broken, right? That you had these folks that did the networking, and you had these folks that did the sysadmin, and those folks that built the applications, and then the other folks that you did the database. And never the twain should meet. If anything, they were throwing bombs at each other because, you know, this one wasn't getting that done or that was in the way of doing something else.
They were there to protect each other from each other, right? To stop them from doing bad things. And we're stopping.
No, that's right. That's right. So now, again, we are in this kind of interconnected environment where we're dependent on each other, right? If you don't have the connectivity, your stuff doesn't work because everything is out in the cloud, right? If you don't have the configuration, you know, motions and hygiene that's there, you can't guarantee that, you know, your environment is going to be available and it's going to scale to the degree that you need to. So it's, you know, there's just a lot of really cool dependencies that, you know, we've started, and again, I know that sounds like a little bit of an oxymoron, right? A cool dependency. But the fact is, or interdependency may be a better way to phrase that, right? That, you know, again, it's not, you can't work in a vacuum and expect, you know, kind of a lot of this stuff to work over time. And again, I think that forces us to both break down a lot of those organizational and cultural barriers that have plagued, you know, many IT shops and business shops for, you know, decades on that front. But it also allows us to really unleash the innovation that resides within a lot of these different groups that, you know, you can get to a point of 1 + 1, you know, equaling, you know, 3 or 4 or 5, depending on, you know, the level of, you know, kind of magnification and leverage you can get, you know, from these environments. So again, you know, in a lot of cases, folks get uncomfortable with interdependencies. But the reality is in this kind of environment, it's not just, you know, a benefit, it's a necessity.
Mm-hmm. Won't work without it, right? And you know, and it's happening at such a pace that no one person or group can slow it down or stop it. You know, if you think about historical norms, it is, you know, we're just kind of all kind of getting on the same train together here, hopefully. And frankly, our ability to compete, a lot of it is on our ability to collaborate and work together and solve good problems very quickly.
Well, that's right, and that's kind of my next, you know, kind of you know, I'm thankful that finally application security is getting, you know, kind of its day. I wouldn't call it in the sun yet, right? But it's become a lot more important, right? And as you look at, you know, kind of the adoption of DevOps and the move towards DevSecOps. And I was doing a conference presentation the other day, and I was, you know, I go around the room. It was maybe 20 people in the room. So I was going around, hey, what do you do? You know, what company you from? And one guy said, yeah, I run DevSecOps, you know, for, you know, fairly large, you know, kind of cable provider. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, what do you do? And he was like, well, we're still figuring that out. Because, you know, they had, I mean, it was a new thing. It's like, yeah, I've had the position for like 2 months and we're trying to, you know, figure out what exactly that means. So I thought that was both entertaining and indicative, right, of where we are. But the fact is, you know, application security was always that thing that it was just like, why are we not better at this, right? Why don't we make more significant investments in this? And it was too hard, and the developers didn't give a crap about it, right? I mean, it really came down to those things. And now that we can integrate a number of these motions into, you know, kind of the pipeline, so it just happens, right? We can integrate it into the IDE so that, kind of when somebody makes a stupid, foolish mistake, we can catch it before it gets committed and then having to get it, kind of pushed out and pushed back. We can do things like code signing or artifact signing, so that when we're integrating and assembling an application, right, we know that it's trusted components that we're using, which address, some of our bill of materials and some of the supply chain attacks that we've seen that have been so damaging over the last year. And all of these things are application security related, right? So I think that finally, we're in a position where folks are understanding that when we say DevSecOps, right, we've got DevSec, right? And that's how we're going to actually secure the development side of things. And we've got SecOps. That's how we're going to securely operate, the environment. And it's really nice because, for years and years and years, all of the focus was on the SecOps side of things. And there's still a lot of focus on the SecOps kind of thing, but in order to improve efficiency and in order to, really make DevOps kind of work as optimally as it needs to, we really do have to think about security. And I think that is something that I'm thankful for in 2022.
One of the things I'm also thankful for is, you just reminded me of this. One of the things I really like about DevOps is it's not a methodology. I went through my whole career fighting about what was the right methodology, the right SDLC, the right whatever, kind of the religious wars of, if you will, if I can use that term, about this methodology and that. And it was just, all baloney kind of, it's just fighting about ideas and which one was the right one when there wasn't a right one. And now in terms of DevOps, we talk about not the methodology, but we talk about the process of how we create software and automating it and securing it. And it's more tangible. It's more real. It's about what we do and the process of how we create it, not just theoretically, how do we project manage it? Oversimplification about methodologies, but let's face it,
I don't think so, right? Because Agile was, kind of a major departure for how we did a lot of things. But that was still at the methodology level, right? This is how you do it. This is how, and DevOps really comes along with not just, kind of obviously Agile is optional, but it really is hard to see how you can do DevOps without, kind of some, kind of Agile type of approach. But DevOps, comes along with, kind of a set of tools that you can use. And sometimes you're integrating your own tools, you're using open source. And I think that's great. A lot of the cloud native stuff. Sometimes you're using somebody else's pipeline and all of the associated tooling that goes along with that and security capabilities and artifact, kind of repositories and, deployment environments. So, you really have kind of that whole continuum of support. If you are a do-it-yourself or you're a builder, you're somebody that, kind of is a tool person and you play around with it, yeah, you can download a whole mess of components and you can DevOps. Right. You can DevOps. If you're, somebody that needs a little bit more structure and package stuff, you can, get on a GitLab or, kind of leverage some of the advanced capabilities within, GitHub and leverage, somebody else's infrastructure. So you don't have to get into that, kind of operational motion and all stops in between. Right. So, and this will be one of the themes of Predict. Right. But it's, and again, the DevOps is not dead, right? Just because we're not talking about it every day, that means it's happening, right? And it's happening in all different shapes and sizes, form factors, deployment models. It's happening, right? Where at the edge and actually speaking of that, we're recording on Tuesday. You'll see this on Thursday, and on Wednesday is DevOps Experience, right? So by the time you see this, it will have been yesterday. Right, that we've talked about DevOps experiences, DevOps everywhere, right, down to the edge, into the cloud, and all these other places where, we're seeing DevOps happen. And that's because it isn't just a methodology, right? It's really an environment that you can, and it's a philosophy, but it's also a set of tangible tools and models and capabilities that allow you to do DevOps regardless of where you are on the sophistication curve. And that's cool, right? I mean, I'm a noob in a lot of this stuff. And, I read the Phoenix Project, but, now that I'm talking and working, with folks that do this every day, it's just cool, right? I mean, a lot of what we've done from a technology, kind of evolution standpoint is just cool. And I'll, be like, ooh, starstruck and, that kind of thing. But I mean, I think it really does.
It's fun. That's what makes it cool. It is fun.
It makes it, but it's not just fun, but it makes kind of some advanced technology motions more accessible. And that's what we've always wanted out of, kind of the environment.
Mm-hmm. I very much agree. You remind me one other thing. This is my snarky thankful. I'm glad that everybody won't have to watch the videos of you and I and Alan and everybody in our Toy Story outfits. Now the DevOps experience is over.
Exactly. I was the alien. Nobody knew that I was the alien. I was the anonymous guy, and I think that's good. That we were talking about some themes for some of our conferences for next year, and I fear I'm going to be a little bit more visible, kind of the next time. So
I have a feeling
we'll see how that goes.
The secret is we knew your voice right away, so you gave it away.
Well, yes, that is. It's funny. So recently, I'm thankful, the fact that I can get around, and even though being injured, I'm able to travel around and do, a bunch of stuff. I was able to surprise my son, at a pretty important event for him in his life. And, he was blindfolded at the time. It was his paternity initiation. And, when I started talking, he knew right away it was me, right? That distinctive voice. And it was great, both on both sides. So, again, I'm thankful for being able to travel and not just, kind of the whole health, kind of environment, but also, my personal environment. So, just a lot of stuff to be thankful for. I mean, I guess I'll throw one more and then we can, kind of wrap up. I'm thankful for a lot of, kind of the innovation that the hyperscalers have brought to the table. Right. And yeah, the world of cloud does not begin and end with AWS and Azure and GCP and maybe Alibaba. Right. There are dozens of alternative clouds that you can use depending on what you need. There's all sorts of different SaaS environments. But what these folks have done is they've removed kind of the barrier to entry of anybody building out sophisticated technology environments. You want to do Kubernetes, you get onto, Azure Kubernetes service and you're there, right? Or EKS, right? The Elastic Kubernetes service from AWS. These things are just there and they're accessible and they're not expensive. Obviously, if you're doing something at enterprise scale, the dollars can certainly add up, but it's much more accessible. So we've seen just a tremendous amount of innovation unlocked because you don't have, when I started my first company, we had to spend $10,000 on a Spark station and we had to spend $20,000 on an SAP license. And we had to spend $15,000 on a consultant to actually install SAP onto the Spark station that we started. And all told, we were in about $100,000 before we could even start developing code.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Without
now, nowadays you've got a monthly nut of, $50, right? And some of this stuff is going to be on free tier and you can start doing things, right? And I think, just the programmability of infrastructure now, right? Whether you want to call it infrastructure as code or, kind of stuff that runs in hyperscalers or accessible via APIs, however you want to interact with it, it's there, it's cheap, and it's plentiful relative to where we've been. And that has really accelerated the innovation that we've seen in our world, right? That's accelerated digital transformation. It's really provided a platform that allowed cloud native infrastructure to take root, right? It's really the substrate that, DevOps runs on top of, and all that stuff needs to be secure. So that really, 15 years ago when cloud computing really started happening, that set the stage for where we are today with all the, interesting stuff that we at Techstrong, research cover and the Techstrong group, kind of has carved out as our own little area of the world. So I think that's just incredible.
Piddling onto your fire there. And I think one of the unsung heroes of the cloud and the innovation that happened when I started using AWS is the first one just happened. early on, about 2008 or so. And the first aha I had is anybody with a credit card in the browser, you have access to all this stuff. And it was like, okay, this is going to change everything, right? You don't have to go through anybody to get this stuff. You just go buy it.
That's right.
And that really, I mean, talk about everything being accessible through a web interface and a credit card. That to me is game changer, and it really has been.
It was, especially when we started seeing customer data up there because some developer had their credit card, kind of doing that. And then, of course, kind of the pendulum swung back and corporate, kind of finance kind of got a handle on that, especially some of the big organizations. But you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And just think about what the impact that software as a service has had on removing a lot of that operational responsibility from these IT teams and letting them focus on things that are more value accretive to their business. So there's just a lot of stuff that this cloud revolution has started to, really enable, in kind of the technology environment. So as you can tell, right, we have a lot to be thankful for. Now, could things be better? Of course, things can always be better, right? Macroeconomic issues and a lot of people are struggling out there, and inflation around the world is high. But again, once as you get a little bit older, you get a lot more perspective, and you know what, everything it's terrible. It's never been like this, and you know what? It's pretty damn good relative to, kind of a number of different times in life. I mean, I remember sitting in, kind of gas lines. Yeah. And I remember sitting in gas lines when I was 4 or 5 years old, kind of in the early 70s, right? And we didn't know if we were able to get gas, and we'd get up at 3 a.m. and sit in line. And inflation was not at, 7, 8%. It was at 12, 15%, back then. So, again, and I know the kids today, they all get all flustered and but the reality is kind of the environment, all other things being equal, the standard of living, I mean, all that stuff is greatly improved relative to where we are. So I think we can all take a little bit of time off next week. I don't think we'll maybe run some reruns and stuff on Techstrong TV, but we'll be out most of the week, and hopefully everybody else has a safe and a happy holiday. That's what I have.
Maybe see you at reInvent. Right? We'll be there.
Yes. Oh, we have to pimp our stuff, right? So yes, we will be at reInvent. So if you will be there, let us know. We were happy to meet. We're happy to do and shoot Techstrong TV interviews. Predict 23, January 12th. We're starting to think about, we've kind of got our structure for our panels. So if you're interested in possibly being on one of our panels, reach out and let us know. They're going to be our structure. So no, you're not going to get up and pontificate and do, kind of your thing. But if you have an opinion and, you think you can contribute to some of the panels, reach out and we'll see if we can find a spot for you on that front. And then Mitch, what are you doing? You have big holiday plans? You can get the grandkids together and do all that kind of stuff?
Yep. Grandkids, kids getting together. Not everybody, but, we've got a critical mass, enough to get some turkey out, cook it up, and some ham. Well, I love ham for holidays. So, and all the other good fixings. So apple pie and
all the other.
The problem is that I like it all. That's the problem.
Yes. Well, again, it's not a data diet for sure. No, I'm going down. My in-laws are from Dallas, so we're going to head down there. Quick trip. Getting out on Thursday and heading back on Saturday. So it'll just be a quick trip down there. But spend time with family, right? And that's really the important thing is to go down, see some family, and enjoy each other's company to the degree you can, and then get out right before you stop to enjoy each other's company, which tends to happen with family as well.
Very true. Yeah, before you get back to the old days.
So with that, this is our Thanksgiving episode. We have given lots of thanks on behalf of myself and Mitch and all of us at Techstrong Group. Again, hope everybody has a safe and a happy holiday. And we will see you at reInvent the week after Thanksgiving. And I would suspect we're going to shoot a number of videos, both the research review as well as a lot of interviews and maybe some other thought pieces that we'll get, because we'll have a captive audience. Our video guys will be there and nothing else to do. So I think we'll just start shooting a whole mess of video.
Sounds fun.
So with that, enjoy. We will see you on the flip side.
Take care, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Previously on Engineering the Change.
It's kind of like being on a football team. You got to make cuts to the roster, right? But we got to take it down to 3 finalists. Her essay was one of the best essays I've ever read in the 3 or 4 times we've done this.
Yeah.
So,
She's in.
But there was, to me, Carly epitomizes why we do this. I give extra bonus points to people who can write well and can express themselves, and Donald did express himself. All right, so let's go through this then. Stephanie Sanchez, Donald Brazil, and Carly Duvel are our 3 finalists for this cohort's Engineering the Change Scholarship.
Engineering the Change has literally changed the lives of scholarship winners. Here are our past recipients.
My name is Victoria Roas. I am an immigrant from Brazil. I came to this country when I was 10 years old.
My name is Drew Johnson. I'm a full-stack software engineer.
My name is Alina Maluk. I'm from Ukraine. I'm the winner of scholarship from 2 cohorts before me.
The Engineering of Change scholarship that I won last year was life-changing.
I really poured my soul and told my story to them, and a few weeks later I got a call from Alan, and it was, I even cried on the phone, I think. And it was like a life-changing moment.
The program at Boca Code was amazing. It was easy for me with zero experience to learn the fundamentals of software development.
My career has completely changed from barely being able to, hold down a job to now being sought after by some of the biggest tech companies in the world.
Boca Code has built me up.
I got a job at hot fintech software company at the day of graduation.
I think that becoming a software engineer has been one of the most rewarding things in my life.
I am Carly Duberval, mother of 2 amazing children. I have a bachelor degree in accounting.
My name is Donald Brazil. I was born in Haiti. I was raised in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Growing up, I've always been interested in technology.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm originally from Haiti. I've resided in Miami for wherever it feels. I currently have a degree in psychology, and I enjoy helping people.
I migrated recently to Florida because of insecurity and political issue.
I fell into software engineering as something I would love to pursue.
I feel like there is a void that I still have. There's something tugging at me because I feel like I have not challenged myself to reach my full potential.
Here in US, my degree is not accepted. I need to work for my family duties.
Winning this scholarship is a great opportunity for me to finally, pursue that career in software engineering. And, I would love to, give back to those who were in my position where they were completely lost and didn't really have any guidance.
My goal is to be a vessel to other people, other underrepresented communities.
Without money and resources, I can't afford to go to Boca College.
And being a finalist is an amazing opportunity. I would never have thought I would have been even considered.
This field, I will be good at it. And I have an opportunity to make an impact on my community and the world.
If I won this scholarship, I will share my knowledge with other Black women, immigrants, who share my faith.
I would love to, have the opportunity at the end of the day to showcase those who believe in me, and then, help others who also, would be in the same position that I am.
Because I know my contribution will make a lifelong impact on the world.
Thanks so much for joining us here for this interview today. And you know what? Making it to the finals for this is an accomplishment in and of itself. And I think it really talks about the kind of person you are. And, reading your essay, I was very, very impressed. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I will be that software engineer who will help immigrants to achieve their dreams.
5 years, I would love to see myself, slowly opening my organization, have it on the ground, running. I just want to see myself helping others, just like others help me. I just want to give back to those who gave to me.
I see myself hopefully excelling in the field of software engineering, and I don't know exactly what my niche will be. So I know that I'm going to be excelling. I don't know exactly what it'll look like right now, but you guys will be proud.
Why do you want to be a software engineer? What's gonna make you stick through this at the end of the day?
I love it. I can do it. I will do it. Why I will do it? Because I love it.
It's just a great field to get into. The technology portion of it is just something I've always been interested in. As a kid, I've always been interested in computers, phones, gadgets.
I always felt a need to, or a pull toward doing something for someone else. In the field of engineering, allows me to continue to do that, because whether it is in a medical field, the automotive field, just the world of entrepreneurship, there's just so many different ways that I can continue doing good and making an impact.
One of the things that's something that's very near and dear to my heart is, equity, parity, gender diversity, and just diversity and parity on all levels, equality. And I wonder how do you envision going about doing that?
Like I did with my old career, I lift women to accounting in my country. I motivate them, I assist them, and help them to achieve, like I said, to achieve their dream, to be excellent in this field.
I would love to open an organization that can, give back to those and help guide them with the, the opportunities that, I'd had from this experience.
What drives you to do software engineering and not, go back to something that you've already known and you've obviously been very successful at?
I would say now everything is technology. So why should I say in accounting? If the world is moving and everything now is tech. I have two brothers. One died in 2007. He was a senior software engineer. My youngest brother is a software engineer. Why not me? It's because I'm woman? No. I want it, I will do it.
At the moment right now, I work inventory for a home installation company. It's a pretty okay job, but it's not what I feel that I was meant to do.
The knowledge I have, I can pass on to other people. I know some of the challenges that our communities face. So with my knowledge and my mentorship, whether it's mentoring one person or just a group of people, exposing them to this field and to just other fields that exist where there's more to life than just what is in front of us. And I believe that I can be a bridge in that gap.
How do you feel like the scholarship is gonna do to you? Like, why is it important for you to win this?
I will share my knowledge with people, with women or immigrants, and use my knowledge to help them.
This scholarship is giving me that opportunity to show the world that, you know, I can do great things.
So this scholarship would definitely assist me in changing the trajectory of my life and hopefully where I can continue this same legacy in helping other people as well.
You know, your essay was amazing. Your answers here today were amazing. You really do represent what engineering the change is all about. Thanks for coming in today, and we can't wait to announce our winners soon.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, this is Mike Rothman. Welcome back to another Techstrong TV interview. I am very pleased to be joined by Dan Lorman of Presidio. We'll have Dan introduce himself in a sec, but you know, we're going to do one of these things that's a little bit interesting on Techstrong TV today. We're going to revisit some predictions that somebody came onto the show and made a couple of months ago, and we're actually going to come back and revisit them in terms of what was right on, you know, kind of target, what was maybe a little bit off target, you know, and where do we see things moving forward now that we're kind of in this whole 2023 planning cycle that a lot of folks are trying to get their arms around, you know, what's going to happen. So, but before we jump into that, Dan, why don't you introduce yourself, give us a sense of what Presidio is and what they do. And by the way, I was a little bit rude. Welcome to Techstrong TV. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, Mike, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be with you. I'm Dan Lorman. I am the field Chief Information Security Officer, Field CISO for Presidio. And Presidio is a global digital solutions provider. We provide services that help companies make the transformation by using technology and really modernizing their infrastructure, making the journey to the cloud in secure ways. And we help companies all over the world in a wide variety of areas. But certainly I focus on cybersecurity and how to do, really enable a digital transformation in secure manners and a lot of different forms we get involved, but happy to be with you today.
Yeah, you bet. And that's obviously a topic that's near and dear to our heart at Techstrong, right? We've got Digital CXO, which is our digital transformation editorial site. We're really working with a lot of the, you know, large organizations, help them understand, you know, how and why and really, you know, when they should be thinking about embracing a lot of these technologies. Obviously, we have Security Boulevard, you know, focused on the security side of things. And that's something that's near and dear to my heart, right? As a 30+ year security professional, obviously yours as well. Dan, but, you know, really a lot of what the discussion surrounded last time was, you know, and you focused on banking a little bit, but it's really about, you know, kind of how a lot of the regulations are evolving. What does that mean to different organizations? And when you break it down into a number of other industries, right? How do we have to start thinking about these overarching, and evolving mandates as a way to start planning what we're going to do over the next year, right? So I know we want to revisit, kind of what you said a little bit before, but I also want to make sure we have sufficient time to ensure that we give folks a view forward in terms of how they have to start thinking about this problem.
Absolutely. Well, I think the challenge, Mike, is, we start thinking, why is this happening? CNBC came out with a report just earlier this month that said $1.2 billion in ransomware payments were processed by a report that came out just recently. And so, clearly this is a huge issue facing all the industries. And so what we talked about with Charlene back in the spring was the banks have reporting requirements. There's different regulations out there, but basically that they have to report within 72 hours of a substantial incident, security incident, which is like a ransomware, an outage, something that causes their business to be disrupted. There's also regulatory processes that say within 36 hours. Ransomware payments need to be reported within 24 hours. And so these different regulations that are out there, and what we talked about was how they're impacting other industries. And so what the change that came out that, we wanted to mention is that on September 12th of this year, 2022, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency basically came out with a number of RFIs that say that they want input on this. From the industry across the board on, what the definitions are, they want input from us across the industry. But then last month, they announced, CISA announced that transportation and communications, water, which is, EPA, and then health and hospitals and the Health and Human Services in the federal government are going to start, basically coming out with rules around reporting in those critical sectors. So that basically it would be required that if you have an incident, you're going to have to report it. And, and also ransomware payments and those kinds of things, and really tracking that, because those big numbers are based on what we know, right? I mean, but the question always is, what do we not know? What's not
exactly
important?
I mean, clearly we have an iceberg situation here, right? That what we see is what, kind of is above the waterline, but clearly there's a lot going on, kind of below the waterline from that standpoint that we want to, focus on. And I think that's an interesting, thing to start digging into. One, I'm such a huge fan of what CISA is doing here in the United States. I mean, just in terms of making security policy and a lot of the controls that we have to think about, much more accessible to both large and small organizations. I think, Secretary Jen Easterly is a great, kind of spokesperson, right, for the security business, or I guess she's the head of it. I don't know. I don't think you call her secretary. I think really that's fantastic. And again, this is just another example of them getting out ahead of what is, really an issue that's very, again, controversial to people, right? They don't necessarily want to talk about, the fact that they got popped. They don't want to talk about whether, they ended up paying the ransom or not. They don't want, folks to know that they're not perfect. And in some cases, your data, has been breached, if not inaccessible, really impacting, the availability of services. So I think that's great. So, CISA's come out with a couple of guidance things. So you were right, from that standpoint, relative to, where things are going, or where things were, right? I want to really talk about, some of the other industries, right? Finance, healthcare, some of these other, kind of, I would say, higher profile, really, kind of more sensitive data at risk in these environments. Do we think we're going to start to see guidance on, kind of reporting for some of these organizations? When? Do you have any idea what that's going to look like? And really, most importantly, how that's going to change how an organization should be thinking about their security investments as we, kind of get into the 23 planning cycle?
Yeah, the simple answer is yes. I mean, we're going to see across all the sectors, and we talk about the critical infrastructure sectors. I'll just read them quickly here, right? This, chemical sector, commercial facility sector, communication sector, critical manufacturing sector, dams, defense industrial base, emergency services sector, energy sector, financial services, which already has the rules, the banking, that they're already in place, food and agriculture, government facilities, healthcare, information technology, nuclear reactors and materials, transportation sector, water and wastewater systems. So I think what they've announced is that for 4 sectors, and they've sent out, requests for input. So, part of the challenge we talked about with Charlene the last time, Mike, was, the supply chain, who's impacted. If you say, okay, we would say nuclear reactors. Sure. I mean, obviously we would want that to be reported, but if it's a water system, there's a lot of private water systems, a lot of small water systems. What about their suppliers? So who does this actually impact? Is it like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers to these organizations? So the definitions are really key. And that's what CISA is asking for right now. You can go out to the CISA website and have input into that. But, we're going to see rules coming out from regulated agencies in transportation, communications under the FCC, water, it's going to be the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and then health will be Health and Human Services. I think you're going to see regulations in those areas, and they're going to start rather, small, but it's going to grow. Now, not all of these sectors are regulated. And so there is debate. You said there's debate about, how much should regulation, that slow down industry? When do you need to report? What's the definition of an incident? What is, clearly if you have a major ransomware and your whole system is down and we know that's a big incident.
Yeah. Pipeline. We have experience with pipeline issues.
We know that. Right. And we know, JBS Meats was down. And it was all over the papers. So we're not really, I think those are clear, but every organization is attacked each and every day. And so really clarifying what are the rules, what constitutes an outage, what constitutes a cyber attack, an incident of significant reporting, a reportable incident. Those are the things they're working through now. And I think could be slightly different in different
I suspect it will be, right? Once, I'm not a military guy in any way, shape, or form, but I do know the term, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? So I know that, things will be shifting, once folks get their hands on. But I want to talk a little bit about enforcement, right? Okay. Because, again, being an older guy and kind of, having been through, HIPAA and Sarbox and a lot of these really high profile regulations that, everybody's like, insecurity. And we kind of ran around with our, heads cut off for a couple of years trying to figure it out. And it turned out to, largely be a nothing burger, right? A lot of organizations made a business decision that said if I kind of evaluate likelihood of getting caught versus penalties, if I am caught, it's an easy decision to not, kind of worry about protecting, my customer data, because there's just not enough in it for, not enough downside for me to, make the millions of dollars of investments that I would have to be to fix the problem. Are we in a situation? Obviously, the downside of getting popped by ransomware is problematic enough, but from an enforcement standpoint, are we going to see something that has enough teeth to get folks to really play ball with this?
It's hard to say exactly how this is going to roll out. If you look at banks as a model, obviously our bank regulators, they have a lot of audits. They go through that, and it's not surprising. It's also where all the money is, right? So that's, kind of them leading the pack, and they have penalties associated with that and certifications and things that are on a regular. Obviously they're starting with the more regulated industries, the hospitals, the rules around that, the like I said, water, chemical plants, the kinds of things where they're used to having regular audits. I think you're going to see fines. Number of these industries, how do you enforce in the IT sector as a whole? It's going to be challenging to talk about enforcement, wider enforcement in a number of these sectors. I do think it's going to be gradual. They're going to ramp it up. They'll start slow. In some cases, there may be overreach where there's too much regulation. And I just, what we're seeing here is the challenge, I think, that's really going to be interesting, Mike, is what if and when, the domino effect from a number of these. And so, clearly we lose our power, we lose the energy sector, we lose, electricity, and like as we had the blackout of the Northeast, the impact to society, the impact is huge. So, they're trying to prevent, obviously, that trickle down supply chain challenge, but these sectors feed each other as well, right? They rely on each other. So I think, will there be an embarrassing, situation that comes out that gets a lot of attention, that all of a sudden lights a fire under this and we see more sooner? Will the events of the election affect, will Congress, it generally tends to be a bipartisan issue around cybersecurity, but, regulation is something that obviously Republicans like less than the Democrats. And so the question of how all that plays out, time will tell. But there's no doubt in my mind you're going to start seeing more reporting mandates around incidents, because we don't even, you can't protect what you don't know about. And so the criminal justice community, the law enforcement community really wants to get a better handle on, is that $1.2 billion ransomware number for last year even the right number? I mean, it might be a lot larger than that.
Well, and we'll never know what the real number is, because, some folks are going to obfuscate, and that's always, kind of part of the game. Sure. To me, a lot of the benefit of, kind of a mandated reporting is to learn about tactics, right? Listen, guys like you've got teams of people who, kind of spend time, basically excavating what's publicly known and in threat intel communities and reversing malware and understanding what the attacks look like. Right. Yep. Most other organizations don't have those capabilities. So they're relying on their security vendors to give them some researches. Some maybe they pay for third-party threat intel to give them some, view of that. So anything that's going to get out into the public sphere that helps folks understand what the tactics are, right? What you can do to remediate those tactics. And more importantly, what can you do to protect yourself from that kind of attack, I think is a net positive for everybody. So I'm excited, for those kind of things. I'm skeptical in terms of enforcement. So we can put that into my predictions, bucket for the next year. I think that's just brutal. But I do think that, especially the highly regulated organizations are going to have to start to come clean, and we're going to learn a lot. I think that's a net positive for everybody.
I would agree. And I think that you're going to see, like you said, more and more help. There's a lot of talk about how the public and private sector can work together, how we can have partnerships. And the law enforcement community, can help, especially with nation state attacks, when you're talking about attacks coming from foreign adversaries and that kind of a thing. I think there's a lot of benefits that can come from it. I do think it's going to be an ongoing, kind of back and forth as to what is the right level of regulation versus what is overreach.
That's right. So with that, Dan, I again really appreciate the time. One, I appreciate you coming back. Most folks, and I'll say I front cortex not working as good as it used to. So I wasn't going to remember to say, I better call Dan and find out, how we did on those predictions. So I appreciate you coming back onto the show and giving us an idea. And it never hurts when you're right. If you were wrong, I'm not sure how excited you'd be to come back on the show and talk about that. But you were clearly right in this aspect. I think it's an interesting area, because we do need to share information better, and not just, kind of between private and public, but also amongst all of the private organizations, so that we can, again, benefit from the misfortune of others, which is a term I like to use relative to threat intel, and just sharing a lot of that perspective. So Dan, thank you for showing up on Techstrong TV. Many parting words or thoughts that you want to leave us with?
I just want to thank you, Mike, for having me. It's great to be on, and you can, if you want to learn more about Presidio, certainly Presidio.com is our company website. But I have a blog for, you mentioned a number of different blogs. My Government Technology Magazine is actually also syndicated at Security Boulevard. So it actually comes out to the one you mentioned. So, Lorman on cybersecurity at govtech.com. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn as well, Dan Lorman. And thanks so much for having me.
That's great. Appreciate that, Dan. And with that, we will send it back to the studio for our next interview.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Ming Gong, who's the newly appointed Vice President of Product Management for Blameless. And we're talking about what is going on with all things SREs. Ming, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here with you today, Michael.
Blameless has been at this whole effort to create a platform specifically for SREs to help them manage their workflows and everything that goes on from one end of the process to the other. And the question I have for you is, are you seeing people actually become SREs and then look for a new platform, or is it they kind of just accidentally fall into this role and they wake up one morning and somebody starts calling them an SRE and they're like, oh, well, that's great. Thanks for letting me know who I am. But I guess I'm trying to figure out has SRE become a standard job title, or is it still more of a description of a function?
That's a really good question. What we're noticing in the market today is that SRE is very much a job title still. But as Blameless evolves and as the market evolves, I think the practice of SRE goes beyond a title. It goes beyond the role. So more and more you see teams operate and develop software all within the same team. So SRE is very much a practice that's being adopted in the software realm also.
What do you think is the relationship between an SRE who manages the IT infrastructure and a lot of the processes for deploying the application and the rest of the IT organization, which is typically made up of administrators who use more graphical tools? Does there need to be some sort of meeting of the minds of these sorts, or is the SRE kind of operating in isolation from all of those folks?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think about this question in terms of teams, how teams operate and collaborate together to ultimately satisfy the needs of their customer. And typically in a software development life cycle, the landscape is made out of a lot of different roles, a lot of different tools and best practices. So if you're thinking about satisfying your customers, you have to operate as a team. And oftentimes these tools and these practices will have to be aggregated and integrated into a single platform. That way, the teams can collaborate more effectively and understand what's going on in a more holistic way. So that SRE is not isolated, but it's the whole entire team that gets involved. In particular, if you think about a good incident response scenario, it's important to aggregate all that's happened in the development and operating pathway, so that you can get the right people involved at the right time, you can better manage expectations with your customers and stakeholders, you can better resolve, you can better learn as a team. So in essence, I think that SRE shouldn't be isolated, and it all comes from the tools, and it all comes from integration and aggregation to a single platform.
So regardless of role in the organization, you kind of want to have a view of the same thing that everybody else is looking at. And if the SRE is the leadership of that effort, you still need a view for the IT administrator to understand what it is that they're supposed to go fix.
That's right. Ultimately, you really want to centralize all that's happened along your tool chain, so you can have this vantage point to assess these hidden points of friction across not only your tool chain, but your processes and your teams and across your life cycle, so that you can make sure the same incident doesn't happen twice.
We have been having this debate about DevOps versus traditional IT service management tools, and there's different frameworks and different levels of agility and speed and reliability concerns. And I wonder, as the time come to kind of put aside that conversation and kind of just move forward and say, agility doesn't have to come at the expense of reliability and vice versa.
I think that's right. When you're talking about agility and reliability, really you're talking about going as fast and as safely as possible. At Blameless, we think about that in terms of resilience. And resilience ultimately comes from the ability to learn and the ability to prevent. And that also that goes back to my earlier point in how we have to have that vantage point, both learn and prevent, so you can create an environment of resilience. And why that's really important is because so that teams can see, based on past data, past incidents, they can set better goals going forwards, to better manage resources, to improve collaboration, improve safety, improve velocity, ultimately improve trust with their customers, no matter how fast they go. And yeah, that's what we think about in terms of resilience.
Yeah. The other animal we see in the DevOps zoo these days is the so-called full stack developer. And my question to you is, does that function exist because there wasn't somebody who was an SRE to manage the infrastructure for folks, so developers kind of took that on themselves? But it seems like it's a rare developer that actually wants to manage infrastructure. So are we having a moment in time where maybe, full stack developers were necessary for a moment, but maybe everybody just wants to go back to writing code because there's an SRE to take care of things?
That's a good question. When I think about full stack developer, I think about the need for context switching. What I mean there is, this might be a little spicy, but really, I think businesses really want to move as fast as possible. And when you have somebody who is a full stack developer, they don't necessarily need to cross-train. They don't have to switch context. They know how to do the whole entire stack. And I think when you think about operating, it's not about not wanting to operate. It's the need for the business to go as fast as possible, and having the least amount of context switching.
Mm-hmm. What is your sense, therefore, of the level of maturity that we're seeing in organizations? I mean, are they just beginning to get SREs? Are they further down the path? I mean, and as you think about this, how automated can automated get? Because some folks are like, well, we're seeing AI ops, so maybe we don't need SREs. So, where are we in the proverbial journey?
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack there. Okay, I think that AI ops is still quite nascent because tools and processes differ from team to team. Secondly, there's another force at play here, is that as developers or full stack developers transition into the operational role, you're going to see a maturity curve that will make it so that some organizations will be more advanced than others. In some customers we hear today, they believe that incidents are still very fraught. But in other cases, customers have transformed to a state where these fraught moments in an incident management scenario become an opportunity to learn. So I think it's still emerging.
We also hear a lot of debate about the word certification these days. So, do I need a certification to be an SRE, or is it more just a question of my level of experience and people should know that I have a capability just by looking at my resume, but I don't need somebody to give me a piece of paper with a tag on it that says I'm an official SRE?
I'm not an SRE myself. I've only observed from the benches, from the bleachers, so to speak. In my opinion, and this is not, industry standard, I think that it's just about how effective a team might be. So, if you can operate better with certificates or official roles and titles, maybe that's a best fit for that org. But for some other orgs, I see advantages for the SRE practice being applied across all disciplines.
Well, it does seem like if you do call yourself an SRE, you're more likely to get a raise, right?
Yeah, I think so. But also, I think that's an area that I'm not qualified to say.
All right. So what is that one thing that you see your customers doing when they first get started with the platform that makes you shake your head and go, Can't believe that that's their launch point. What do you wish that they knew before they got started?
That's a really good question. I'm still early in developing an opinion here, but I believe that customers are getting started in all different ways, and I'm supportive of all different ways. So I see some customers starting from an incident management perspective where they are frantically reacting and trying to be better at triaging their incidents, getting there faster, improving their MTTR scores. But also I see other customers starting from a objectives standpoint, meaning they'll want to set some SLOs to begin with, and then work backwards from those objectives. I really like that approach, but also sometimes that approach means that they're forcing the SLO across their teams, regardless of how mature their practices might be.
Mm-hmm. So do you think we're on the cusp of being more proactive about the management of IT? Because despite the last 5 decades of effort, it seems like we're still in this reactive mindset. But, are we on the cusp of changing something fundamentally about the way the IT culture operates?
Well, I don't know if we're becoming more proactive, but I can say that being proactive is really important. Again, when we think about proactive, making sure the same incident doesn't happen twice, you're really thinking about resilience. You're really thinking about going faster and going safer at the same time, really earning that customer trust. So I have to believe that if you're in the software development and in the space where you're trying to satisfy customers and moving as fast as possible, you're going to be interested in becoming more resilient and more proactive at the same time.
All right. I think you just hit on a great metric there, folks. If you're encountering the same problems over and over again, chances are you need an SRE. Hey, Ming, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right. And back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Jeffrey Martin, who's VP of Products for Men, and we're talking about fear and loathing of automation as it relates to threat remediation and patching. It seems to be a growing concern out there. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Hey, always nice to see you. Thanks for having me, Mike.
So the perception is that people need to get a patch built, they wait for it to come along, they test it, and then they install it, and they hope that things don't break. And the end result is we don't seem to patch things very aggressively. And frankly, there's just a lot of software out there that needs patching that doesn't get patched. So what is your sense of what drives this issue? And is there something to be done about it?
So I think there's a few different vectors of concern here. One is the simple fact that whenever you update anything, you're introducing the chance that it might stop critical things from working, or even non-critical things just are a pain to fix. In short, sometimes fixing a security problem can introduce a functional problem. The other one is a little bit more mental. People tend to not want to change things unless they think it's worth it. Some people do that little risk calculation in their head, like I do. Other people just have a general reluctance to update or change unless there's something very important driving that change. That's one of the reasons I think that, there's two big solutions to driving this as a more standard practice. One is actually getting measurements of the functional risk right in front of you when you're looking to remediate and looking to upgrade. So you know, how risky is this? Is it going to introduce a breaking change? Is it going to cripple my infrastructure if I update this in the name of fixing a security problem? And then the other one is the prioritization of the problems it solves. Great. If I introduce this, am I fixing a problem that actually matters to me? Or am I fixing a problem that is of mediocre importance. And frankly, I shouldn't really be too concerned about it because the attack chain is 13 steps wide and I have some mitigation. The OpenSSL 0-day vuln that just dropped yesterday, although we had some advance notice of it, actually is a good example of this, where there's most of the time, it's a high vulnerability. It's important. It's a critical problem. But honestly, most people have OpenSSL deployed, already have mitigation in place, buffer overflow protections in the OS, things like that. That makes it very unlikely to be a real attack chain. But there's about zero risk in updating, so why not? And I think those factors are what's really necessary. All that information is necessary for people to make informed, quick decisions about what to update and how.
Mm-hmm. And how much of this is also just related to simple inertia? Because a lot of times developers are handed this list of vulnerabilities weeks, months after they wrote the code, and they're off on another project and they don't have any context, and they're kind of looking at it going, I have a choice between writing new code or patching this thing, and I don't remember exactly what the issue was, so I'm just going to keep it.
Yeah, I mean, look, legacy code's always an issue. And legacy can be in some companies a few months. In other companies, it can be a decade. Fundamentally, there is this calculation that has to happen about context switching, right? The inertia you're kind of referring to is people don't want to go dive into something until they know what's there. Is it worth it? Silly analogy, but I'm a homeowner. I have a huge reluctance to opening up any wall because I never know what I'm going to find in there. So, right. That inertia, that blockage of actually going in and looking is because it's unknown. I don't know what's behind that wall. As soon as I open it up, I'm going to know. That's not good. The solution to that is being able to have a continual running visibility of code, whether it's new or old. I'm going to beat this analogy to death. See-through walls would make it so I'd have no problem opening up the wall. That for the unknown, that fear of what am I getting into, can be solved through things like automated inventory generation and source code analysis to actually know what your vulnerabilities are, et cetera. It's sort of a sunlight problem, right? If I can see it, I'm not afraid of it.
So as people go down this path, do they need to make a calculation that kind of feels like this? It's like, well, what is the probability that this patch is going to break something versus what is the probability that this vulnerability is going to be exploited? And is this just basically an algorithm or something that somebody can run in a program and just kind of show me in a graph that says, here's what you're kind of wagering on?
Yeah, impact and likelihood and impact of other risks. Look, I think we tend to paint developers a little bit too analytical sometimes, just in general. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I make security software. There is a huge amount of value in being able to say, okay, this vulnerability is on this library. It's a public exploit is known. I'm touching the vulnerable code and it's in credit card processing software, so I really care about the impact. But the fact of the matter is, most people actually don't do the calculations like that. Most people say, I'm going to fix everything that's critical and high. And the reason they do that is because they don't want to go through all the steps. To them, it's not worth it. They just say, great, I'm just going to update this stuff in a blanket way. This causes a lot of issues that could be solved through more analysis. But I think the biggest piece is making sure that you know that functional risk that you're introducing. Because frankly, upgrading a library isn't that big of a deal. It's not much work. It's just a question of what are you going to introduce now? What are you breaking? What are you causing to happen next? Or worse, you're upgrading into more vulnerabilities, which is never good. So I think the real key is that one piece of information. If you could boil it all down, yes, big complex algorithms help, especially at a big scale. But if you can boil it down to just one piece, it's if I fix this problem, am I making more problems?
Do you think we'll ever get to the point where the security teams will just go ahead and patch stuff themselves and then they'll call people when it breaks, but basically they're going to bet on the patch side of that equation, and then they're just going to be like, wait for somebody to start yelling if something breaks?
Yeah, I mean, short answer is yes. But I do think, look, there are things that are more risky than others, right? If I'm going to update something 3 versions, that's a lot more risky than if I'm updating it a point version, right? Going from 1.1 to 1.2, I'm probably fine. Going from 1.1 to 6.2, it's probably breaking something somewhere. So there's some room for reasonableness there, but I think eventually, look, the way everything's trending, automatic dependency updates are going to be the norm. Keeping up to date, using latest tags in your, package manager, always trying to keep up to date is really the only real way to keep up to date on the security. If you have to do everything as I've identified it, now I'm going to go take an evaluation step and then I'm going to patch it. It takes too long, it's too much pain, and frankly, people don't do it. So just keep everything up to date is a good strategy that will eventually bubble out everywhere. But there has to be that sanity in there to say, especially on legacy code, hey, wait a minute, we're jumping 4 versions. This probably isn't a good idea. Let's at least take a look at this first.
What is your real sense of what's going on here between developers and security teams? Every time you turn around, somebody's singing a little DevSecOps Kumbaya. And my question is that what we're really working towards? Or are we just trying to get out of each other's way and let people go do what they need to do in a way that works for both sides of this equation? But we're kind of really not looking to have a moment where we're all joined at the hip and everything we want to do has to be checked with the other team.
I always love that. Look, I'm a product guy at heart, right? I love my dev teams. I want to make sure we're aligned on things. I don't want to have to discuss every single item. I don't need all the details. I need to say something like where we're going. I have my role, they have theirs, and we don't necessarily have to know everything about everything. As a matter of fact, it's kind of a waste of time. It's a little inefficient. I've never been one to really say, oh, DevSecOps means everybody should be there together and security should be in the sprint planning. And look, the fact of the matter is we all have different jobs. We should do them, and we should try to not block each other from doing our jobs. Because we're all working towards the same goal. So if you have that goal alignment, a lot of these other pieces fall into place. Where it causes conflict, and the conflicts that I see most is when the goals aren't aligned. So for example, if you were to goal security only on removing vulnerabilities, well, then they're going to only care about removing vulnerabilities. If you goal security on removing vulnerabilities but not breaking anything, then they're going to focus on that. So incentives and alignment matter. And I think that I love how you put it, the kumbaya of everybody, sitting around the campfire there. That's not necessary and it's not realistic. What's actually necessary is having somebody point the way, set the rules, and then everybody executes their roles. Sounds very boring, but the fact of the matter is sometimes good business processes are a little boring.
So the fact remains, though, that we have massive numbers of applications and whatever else is out there that is unpatched. So do we have some sort of massive technical security debt that we're all ignoring because, it's just too unpleasant a conversation? And, but at some point, this stuff's all going to come home to roost at someday.
Yeah, that's sort of one of these things. I think everybody sort of turns a blind eye to this expression, ignores the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Most software is old. Most software is unsupported, either officially or by not focusing on it. Resource allocations. The fact of the matter is, as we've grown our economies to be increasingly software-based, more of everything is based in software. Cars are the easy example, but literally everything. There are not enough dollars around to keep everything up to date. A lot of these things were built insecure by design, and the cost to replace them is not sufficient. I'll rephrase that. The cost to fix them is greater than the risk of hoping they don't fail. And yeah, there's a ticking time bomb out there. But I think that we're really going to see is it's going to focus on certain areas. Because if I'm a bad actor, I don't necessarily care about bringing some random website down. I want personal data. I want, financial data. I want to be able to influence geopolitics. There's certain goals I have. Those areas should have higher investment. We don't need to worry about every piece of legacy software out there. But the critical ones, yeah, someday soon, I assume, there's going to be a nice big breach. Everybody's going to wake up and go, wait a minute, what were we doing? Why did we not do this? And it'll be like putting seatbelts on cars. We're all going to wonder, wait a minute, there was a time we all didn't have seatbelts? That seems silly. I think I just dated myself on that one. Jeez.
I seem to remember bouncing around the back of a station wagon in my youth. Yeah. To that end, it almost seems like we're never going to make it cool and sexy for developers to patch applications. They're just going to be like, nobody wants to be on the digital maintenance squad, right? They all want to go build the next cool thing, and you can hardly blame them. So in the absence of that, should everybody just at this point kind of go, look, we acknowledge the fact that we need to automate all this stuff because no one else is actually ever going to manually do it anyway. So it's crazy for us to stand here and say, oh, don't do that because we might break something.
Look, it's the Windows update, right? I don't know about you, but I'll date myself again. I remember Windows 3. You'd get an update. How often do you ever update it? Pretty much never, right? Even Windows 2000 or XP, you weren't clicking the update button and applying it and all that. No. So nobody was ever up to date. But then one day Windows comes out and says, hey, where's auto update in the background? And just don't worry about it. And suddenly everybody's up to date. That's what will happen. It'll be automated. It will be vetted to a degree to make sure it doesn't introduce risks. And there's a lot of trends supporting that. One is the reducing complexity of software, which, it's one of those weird things because we're all going to the cloud, but actually software is getting simpler. It's getting more easy to compose it instead of coding it from scratch. And that means you can do things like automatically update patches with a little less risk. And that risk keeps coming down every time. I'll use the OpenSSL one again, just because it's in my mind, because it was the news story this week. I am 100% sure that there is no functional risk going from any of the OpenSSL 3 versions to the latest one, because I know that group tested the heck out of it. So why not keep it up to date?
All right. I think you heard it here, folks. You're either damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Better to be damned for doing rather than doning. Jeffrey, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. It's always fun.
All right. Back to you guys in the studio.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We need an amazing set of interviews with industry professionals to give you the inside scoop into the tech world. And alongside airings of Techstrong Women and Techstrong Research Review, we had plenty of great content today. We'll be back again on Monday, so we hope to see you then. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.